Praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto: in God is our trust. Then the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free. And the home of the brave. God bless America. Dang, I didn't want to choke up, but I couldn't help it.
Thank you so much. All right. So now we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. That was amazing. Oh, wonderful. So, all right. So thank you all for being here. We're going to go ahead and get everything started. I want to first welcome you all to Restoring Hope Church and want to give a big round of applause for them for hosting us. So please thank them right now. So wonderful of them. I'm going to introduce you to Aaron and Amanda, and they're going to come in and say a prayer for us and then talk a little bit about why they started the church and the school here as well. We're going to get that started off. So Aaron married Amanda in October of 2001. Aaron and Amanda have always had pastors' hearts, but until God began to deal with them, they didn't know when or where. In March of 2013, God commissioned them to birth the dream that had been given to them 10 years prior. And in July of 2014, that dream became a reality. Restoring Hope Church was launched and has been going strong ever since. In 2018, they felt led to open Restoring Hope Church Academy, and which they will share about. They have 4 children: Eli, Evan, Ian, and Ida, who also attend the Restoring Hope Academy. All right, thank you. Please welcome Aaron and Amanda.
Hello and good afternoon. I hope that all of you are doing well today. Thank you so much for coming out for such an incredible cause. And as you heard, I'm Amanda, this is Aaron, and this is our home away from home. This is our church. And in 2018, the Lord began to deal with my husband to start a school, and not because there's not incredible private schools around us, but the Lord knew there was coming a greater need for more. And here we are. This year we began our 4th year of private education. We have an incredible headmaster who is out of town, or he would be here, and incredible teachers. We did it a little crazy. We started from pre-K and went all the way up. So we had to level the school out a little bit and hit some bumps along the way. But it has been worth it every step of the way. And we are recipients of that blessing of Christian education. Our heart behind starting a school wasn't to indoctrinate children. We have very strong beliefs here at Restoring Hope Church. You are setting in a very holy place. a holy atmosphere where stage 4 cancer has been uprooted out of bodies. There's a woman in the room who's literally died sitting back here, and God resurrected her to life. She's here today. And so you're sitting in a room full of miracles. It's not just an empty space. It's not just a building. It is very holy. And having said that, we are passionate people. However, we did not feel that it was our job to indoctrinate a child's life. However, support education with a biblical foundation, and that's exactly what we are doing. And having said that, all day today, it was as if the Lord directed me to Ezekiel 33. And if you've ever read any scripture in Ezekiel, it's pretty far out there, and he had some incredible encounters with heaven itself. But in this particular chapter, we find where the Lord is speaking to Ezekiel about the restoration of his call, about being a watchman for Israel. And as he began to speak this, as to this prophet, being a watchman on the wall for this incredible city, a watchman in that day was called to go and stand on the wall and begin to announce if an enemy was invading the territory. And the word of the Lord said it like this to Ezekiel: if you will sound the trumpet and the people ignore your call, then the blood is on their own heads. However, if you do not sound the alarm, if you do not blow the trumpet, and you decide to ignore it as if that enemy invading doesn't exist, I will require their blood on your hands. And so we're here today. I've already told you this is a holy place, and we are very protective of the presence of God. However, it's also a mandate and a call. Not that our children are in public school in this day. However, we do lead a people, and we have been set as watchmen over a city and over a region, and we have a duty to call out and blow the trumpet in Zion. I heard the Lord say, go ahead and cry aloud and do not spare. Use your voice as a trumpet. And so that's why you're here today, because we take this call very seriously. We believe that there is an enemy invasion in the homes and the lives and the hearts of even some of our youngest citizens in this United States. And why? Because the enemy is forever at war with the seed of a woman. And so it is about the future generations. It is about the future of this nation. It's always about the future. God is a forethought God. He is always moving forward, and therefore the enemy always tries to advance what God is doing. So let me just say this. My husband and I lived in Texas for 5 years, and we led worship before we moved here. And the Lord began to speak. He said, if you desire to change the future, you have to get in the present. The enemy is only a copycat of what God is doing. He desires to change a future, and his goal is to get in a present. And I want to remind you today that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of darkness, and they are seated in high places. However, there is still a redeemed of the Lord, whether you are a believer in this room or whether you are not. You're in this building, and this I will also tell you as a watchman on the wall. If you have yet to receive Jesus as your Lord and Savior, today is a perfect day to make that choice. He is the greatest. He is loving. He is kind. He is gentle. He's merciful. And he already bled and died so that we don't have to. The sacrifice and the plan has already been made and laid. And so as my husband comes to pray, I just want to encourage you. It's okay to have a voice. It's okay to cry aloud and spare not. It's okay to stand on the side of the kingdom. This isn't a political left or right side. I choose to stand on the side of the kingdom and the side of righteousness tonight. And so as my husband comes to pray, would you just stand with us as we bow our heads before the Lord?
Amen. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, God, I thank you for a people and a mandate that is in this room. God, I thank you for those who will raise up and take the stand. I thank you, Lord, for frontliners in this day, God, who are not ashamed, and Lord, who care about future generations. God, I pray, Lord, that you would help a people dig kingdom principles into this earth in this moment, Father God. Lord, the Pied Piper is blowing the trumpet to lead people astray. But God, I'm thanking you now for your Spirit in this room. I pray that your Spirit would lead us and guide us and direct us into the truth. Lord, in a day where right is wrong and wrong is right, God, let there be a remnant in this room that will roar, that will be a tribe, Lord Jesus, for you, God. Lord, I ask for the anointing to be released. Lord, I pray for a Acts 4 anointing. I pray that you would hear their threats. And Lord, that you would grant with all boldness the authority to speak in this day. Sheba, thank you, Jesus. I feel his Spirit in this place. Come on, just lift your hands if you believe in that. Lord, we surrender to what you're doing. We surrender, Lord Jesus. Come the threat, God. I thank you for the canopy around the people. I thank you for the blanket of grace that is in this place right now. And Lord, I pray that you would protect the minds of the leaders in this room, God. That you would protect their hearts, Father God. That you would be like a guard in front of them and a guard behind them. That your Holy Spirit would be all around, God. That where there would be pressure, God, that you would produce, God. I pray for that horn of oil, of fresh oil, that Psalms 92 that David prayed for, God. I pray for that kind of anointing in this day to annihilate the plans of the enemy against our children. And we'll never fail to give you the praise for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Whew, all right. Are we ready? Are we ready? Okay. Woo! Thank you, thank you. An amazing, amazing start to today. So excited. This is our first SOS Safeguard Our Schools event that we're doing, but we are in hopes to, this is the beginning of an amazing, amazing journey. And so just want to welcome you guys here, and we're just excited to introduce our first speaker, but as you already heard her. Come on. Was her voice just phenomenal? Phenomenal. Oh my gosh. I was like, when you meet someone, you know, and they're, you know, you meet them in one context and then you see them in another, you're just like, oh my gosh, like a totally different person, right? And so just so excited that she is here with us today. Terri Lynn Weaver, imagine this. She's an award-winning gospel singer, songwriter. Okay, and has traveled the nation over 30 years in the music industry. She and her husband, Mike, live in Lancaster, Tennessee. Anyone here from Lancaster? No? Okay, all right. Okay, where they are both very active in the community. She is a wife, mother, and grandmother. One day, while holding her firstborn grandson, she asked herself, what kind of world will we grow up in, and what can be done to influence that world? Never giving any thought that one day she would be involved in politics. An opportunity to serve was presented. She accepted the challenge and answered a call to public service. State Representative Weaver is serving in her 7th term in the House of Representatives of the Tennessee General Assembly. Having served in the 106th through 112th General Assemblies, she represents the 40th House District, which is Smith, Trousdale, and parts of DeKalb and Sumner County. During the 112th General Assembly, she is currently serving as Vice Chair of the Education Committee. Naming and Designing Committee, the Transportation Committee. She is a past chair of the Safety and Funding Subcommittee of Transportation and the Transportation Subcommittee. Okay. Believing that is there anything she can't do? I'm trying to figure this out. Believing that she was called to office for such a time as this, be salt and light. She brings her strong biblical worldview to the political arena. Please help me welcome Representative Terri Lynn Weaver. Well, thank you so much. Greetings.
I look out here and I see all you folks and I say, wow, this is a group of people who give up their Saturday afternoon to come here and to be here in the church house. And by you being here, you have certainly said you care about your children's education. And you also care about what fills their minds. So I applaud you, so give yourself a hand for being here. And then to boot, we're in a place called Restoring Hope. It just can't get any gooder than that. Where the church must be the center of the community. And yes, and committed to prayer. There's nothing that could stop us if we come together to the church house. And so thank you, Aaron and Amanda, for opening up your church house to the affairs of education in our state and our children. So give them another round of applause. I also want to thank Joanna for coming to my office, bringing some school teachers. I love it when you come see me at your house in Nashville, called the Capitol. And so she's asked me, and I better get on with it here, or the shut-up music's going to come on pretty soon, and I'll have to be done. But basically, I was tasked to speak to you a little bit about how the state of Tennessee functions in the state for education. First of all, I've been sitting on the education committee since the 40th district sent me down there many years ago. I know how many years. It was 12 years because my youngest grandson was born the morning I gave my oath, and his name is Win Weaver. So we are tasked as a committee at the state of Tennessee, we are tasked with some primary responsibility. One, maintenance and operation of public schools. We work with parents, we work with our schools, we work with teachers, the local school boards, of course, local governments, and state government. We align curriculum with student and workforce needs. We oversee appropriate instructional materials, adequately fund our schools and establish state standards, and we build and advocate for good policy in our public schools. It's a lot of work. I take it very seriously. I work with some great colleagues. There's a few of us. There's a nucleus of us that work hard, and we feel like we're playing whack-a-mole because we go after one thing and there's already something else. It's constantly, it's a big job. It's a big job. But some of the things that we did that we're very proud of in this last session is a bill that we rebuilt the textbook commission. We, in 2015, set up a textbook commission with volunteers on there that they're tasked to watch what kind of curriculum comes before your kids, the books. And we thought everything was moving and grooving until we found out that the commission was not doing what they were supposed to do. And we found out there was outside influence, and we found out that things were being done that we weren't really aware of. So we stopped that. We passed legislation that does remove the Department of Education's commissioner, no matter who it is, can no longer influence or interfere with the textbook commission when it comes to choosing books. That was huge. And also, we're trying to introduce a curriculum that is called American Classical Curriculum. It actually teaches real American history. Imagine that. There's a lot of things that we are doing. We also did a Transparency Textbook Act that anyone can go to the Department of Education and click on and find out. It'd be very user-friendly and how to find out what kind of books your children are reading. Even a grandmother can actually operate the technology, so that was really good. But again, we fight constantly as the legislative body. We fight against bureaucrats, lobbyists, people called Bill Gates, who constantly bring influence from other states with their millions and gazillions of money and influence. And you know, the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And there is an enemy, as Joanne alluded earlier. There's an enemy, and they're after the minds of our kids. But we're in a building here called Restoring Hope. And that's no accident either. And because of that, and because of the hope that I see in you, and because God's putting people in strategic places, it was a call that I just answered. He's probably calling on you to run for school board, to run for commission, to run for places of leadership where you bring your influence into those places. He's looking for able bodies. And all you have to do is send me. But again, I always revert back to the genesis of the call of education in our country. In America, our founders believe that education is essential to free government. It's very vital. And I want to applaud any of the teachers in here today that are godly teachers, that are moving in the classrooms and doing all they can to get us back to basics, to get us back to the principles that we need. Content matters. And that's where my watch on the wall is. I'm very concerned about content. I spent many hours as a homeschool mom picking curriculum for my son when we didn't even have internet. But content matters. And what we put in front of our kids is very important. So arithmetic, reading, imagine good reading material. A good book can take you just about anywhere, right? And so the love of our country, good citizenship. I passed legislation that in order for you to graduate as a senior, you have to pass a citizenship test. I can't believe we have to do this. And then even have to pass legislation, which we did 5 or 6 years ago, on cursive writing. So we have our challenges. And we've come through our challenges. But I want to tell you something here, and then I better kind of wrap this thing up, is that all of us in here have been affected by the challenges of COVID in one way or another. But through challenges, we're reminded not to deviate. We're reminded to keep your eyes on the goal, keep yourself focused. So I'm on one of my days of drive. One morning I was driving into the Capitol, going to show up for session. I called my son. I said, Justin, what are you doing? He says, Mom, I'm looking at curriculum. I had to almost pull off the side of the highway because this was an answer to prayer to me, because my grandsons go to school in Davidson County. And I had been praying and praying. And long story short, Justin and Sunshine, his wife, ended up taking the boys out of the public school during the COVID and hooked them up with a Christian school out of Mount Juliet. The point I'm making here is that during the COVID, what the devil meant for evil, God meant for good. And do not forget that. Because parents are awake. Parents now know what is being taught in the schools. And because of that, all across our state and all across this nation, parents are attending school boards. Parents are asking questions. That's why I believe there's hope. Moms are saying, no more drag queen story hours during library time. And moms are also saying and wanting to know about a curriculum called Wit and Wisdom. And it's poison. It's bad. We need curriculum that teaches kids how to love God, how to love their country, how to be good citizens, how to be good, productive American citizens. And we certainly don't need a racist, Marxist ideology that does nothing but bring division and divide our children. In God's eyes, all are created equal. And that's what we believe in. Those are the principles our founders believed in. And we need to get back to those principles. And I'm honored to be able to serve in a capacity for the state of Tennessee with my colleagues to fight and to not deviate, to not give up, and to not back down. I believe that God is calling ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Because ordinary Americans, ordinary Tennesseans don't believe in this junk that's being taught in our schools. Parents, you are in charge of your kids. You are in charge of your kids, so take charge. Know what your kids are reading. Talk to your kids. Get involved when they come home from school. How was your day? What are you reading? What books are you reading? What do you think about that? Ask the right questions. Stay engaged. This is how we fight our battles. This is how we win our kids. And this is how we get involved in our community. And this is the first step. So I have a whole lot of hope. How about you? Scriptures tell us over and over that we are to train a child in the way they should go. And when they're old, they'll not depart from it. Together, as agents of change, you and I, wherever God puts us, will restore hope. And we will revive our schools. So help us God. So the last line that I sang in our national anthem is apropos for such a time as this. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just. And our children are worth a fight. And our children are worth getting them set on the right track because they're our next generation. They're our next state representative. And this be our motto, in God is our trust. Thank you very much.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Representative Terri Lynn Weaver. And can we all wish her good luck? She is off to a cakewalk, and she made a cake, so she's going to be the winner today, right? Okay. So came here, and then she's running off. So, all right. So wonderful. So next person I want to introduce is Jeremy Mansfield. Who here knows Jeremy? Woo! Okay. He was voted, what was it, most popular commissioner in Sumner County or something like that. And if you don't know him, you'll find out why. So most people who know Jeremy would say that he's passionately driven by his faith, his family, and love for the truth. As a county commissioner, he has been passionately dedicated to ensuring our county government is transparent. Very important there, transparent, with its citizens, holding cities accountable, and their irresponsible contributions to our growing communities and infrastructure, and fighting improperly managed property tax increases, and needlessly straddle current and future generations with increased debt. We don't want that, correct? He is not a politician. If you call him that, he may look behind him to see who you are referencing. First and foremost, Jeremy is a follower of Jesus, a husband and a father. By day, he is an experienced design director for a product software company. He also was the designer of our flyers, and so I'm very thankful for him. By night, he is a Sumner County commissioner. He was born and raised here in Hendersonville, okay? Who here is from Hendersonville, like born and raised? Anybody? Okay. There's a few. Okay. All right. Okay. Where his family has lived for 57 years. Jeremy has lived in Goodlettsville for the past 12 years, where he was first elected in 2018 to be a county commissioner representing Goodlettsville, Millersville,
the Shackle Island portion of Hendersonville, and the Ocana portion of Gallatin. So please give a huge round of applause for Jeremy Mansfield.
Thank you, guys. All right, let me get my stuff out here real quick. I do have something I want to do, but hey, Ecclesiastes 10:2 says the heart of the wise leans to the right and the heart of the fools to the left. So I hope that we all want to be right in here and be wise. I'm going to move this stuff right here. This is not mine. So Joanna asked me to talk a little bit from the county perspective on budgets and funding for the schools, which can be a little boring. So I'll try not to be too extremely boring, but wanted to show you guys something real quick. In this bag, I have 4 quarters. Daryl, come up here for a second, brother. I need your help. So I'm the county, and so these 4 quarters represent $1, and let's say that's the entire county's revenue source, the budget. So Daryl's the school boards. So we're going to talk about, like, people always ask, like, how much money does the county give the schools, or how much resources? So hold your hand out. So what's that?
1, 2, 3.
So how many quarters do you have out of $1?
3.
How many quarters do I have of $1?
1.
So this is what the county operates on, is 1 quarter. The schools operate on 3 quarters. Thank you, Daryl. Just want to give you a little visual that conservatively, 75% of all the money in the county goes to the schools. Sometimes people say 78%, 82%, but I know 75% is a pretty safe conservative estimate. 73% of county property taxes goes to schools in Sumner County. 70% of the county wheel tax goes to schools. 100% of the county sales tax goes to schools. 100% of the county adequate facilities tax goes to school. And there's one thing about something that's called the adequate facilities tax is that it nowhere near services school debt. In fact, Mo and I like to call it the inadequate facilities tax. And if you don't know who Mo is, Mo Taylor is an amazing county commissioner from the 1st District up in Westmoreland, and he has done more for the hardworking taxpayers of Sumner County than I could ever do. And that guy, you guys, if you ever see him, thank him. He's one of the most humble guys you'll see. But we all owe Mo Taylor a debt of gratitude. But talking about the facilities tax and percentage of money and what's causing, like, how much is enough for schools? Some would say not enough. Some would say too much. We can debate that all day long, but just wanted to give you an example of a problem in Sumner County we have that affects schools is growth. I'm going to talk about that first. As of last month, in July 2021, property taxpayers in this county will be on the hook for $414 million of debt. And that's because of school bonds triggered by irresponsible growth enacted by your cities, your city councils, your planning commissions at the city and the county level, but mainly the cities. And this rapid growth is negatively affecting Sumner County. Over $300 million of that debt is for new schools or new school expansions in just the past 6 years. So I apologize, I'm gonna be talking a lot of numbers, so I have a lot of this written down, so I hope you don't get too bored, but it's important to just emphasize just some factual and accurate statements, because there's a lot of things that are inaccurately put out there. And so just kind of digging through the weeds is hard to do. It's hard to do for me a lot of times. When I ask a question, these days they don't like to give me answers because I like to share the information that I get. So there's a lot of information that's obfuscated for me from the budget side. If I ask for a certain number in a specific question, usually I'll get a sheet with four sheets of paper with a bunch of numbers, like, well, here's your answer. And so it's not fun all the times, but that's just how it is. Biggest problem, Sumner County doesn't have a way to pay for all of these cities' irresponsible growth. The county officials will try to state that we have an adequate facilities tax on new residential construction throughout the county, including the cities, that is dedicated to funding school debt. But let's take a look at how inadequate these facilities taxes are compared to the amount of money we are borrowing to pay off new school debt triggered by residential growth, which is approved by your cities. So I went to the property assessor's office in 2015 to pull data between 2015 and 2020 The 5 years we've experienced 2 property tax increases totaling approximately 38% increase. And what I found is shocking. In that 5-year period, the county has collected approximately $2.8 million a year in adequate facilities taxes. In that same 5-year period, Sumner County has indebted taxpayers approximately $48 million per year for new schools and new school expansions. So when somebody says we need growth, you just need to ask them why. Because it doesn't pay for itself. I've said this at many city rezoning meetings. It's been said that growth for the sake of the growth is the ideology of the cancer cell. And that's a true statement. You need responsible and smart growth, and you need growth that pays for itself. And we do not have that in Sumner County. So you can understand why we call this impact fee that the county refers to, we call it the inadequate facilities tax, because it is wholly inadequate in servicing the debt incurred for schools because of our city's irresponsible growth. This is an imbalance that has to be addressed, and unfortunately, it can only be addressed at the state level at this point. So I want to get a little bit of history of how we got to where we are, because I know we're going to be talking about curriculum tonight, but it's important to understand the players that put the curriculum in place and what laid the foundation for what you're going to be hearing tonight. So I want to talk about the history of the 2012 lockdown, for lack of better words, where the kids were locked out of schools here in Sumner County. So in the year 2012, it's really the foundation of what I call a far-left liberal group of people that have negatively affected not only Sumner County, but other counties like Williamson as well, which I know they're feeling the pain of. During the 2012 and 2013 budget cycle, school budgets were submitted and rejected by the county commission because the Board of Education was asking for approximately $9 million more than they had available to spend in their budgets. So the director of schools came up with an idea to use children as pawns with a dangerous game of chess with the county commission. The director of schools' plan was to announce that the schools weren't going to open on time because they weren't fully funded according to their wants. Unfortunately, the director was untruthful and said no kids were affected or going to be affected by the lockdown. Union Elementary School in Gallatin had already started a week before everybody else. So 1 week prior to the director providing these false statements to the public, they locked the kids out of Union Elementary and didn't let them come back. Then the director of schools and the school board held the county commission hostage for the children in a budget negotiation. So the county commission tried to give the schools more capital money from their capital projects fund. That was not enough to meet those new demands. Then a week or two later, the school board magically announced they underprojected their state BEP, which means Basic Education Program funding, and they found millions of more dollars in their budget that was already there to begin with. But the damage was already done. All this was, in my opinion, fellow commissioners' opinions, was a hostage negotiation. And it set the foundation for a hostile takeover of the county commission during the 2014 elections by a group of far-left liberal people who started a group called Strong Schools. The elected officials that came in with their takeover of the commission are the same people who are now implementing curriculum like Wit and Wisdom in critical race theory here in Sumner County. But getting back to 2012, after this hostage negotiation, they took all this extra money and they hid it in their reserves in order to pad their budgets. And if you look at the 2014, 13 and 14 and 14, 15 budgets, you'll find on average approximately $20 million in reserves between those 2 years. These reserves came from when they lied about their funding needs in order to pad their budgets. If they were strapped for cash like they said they were, they wouldn't have that much money in reserve funds immediately after the 2012 hostage negotiation. Asked for more money, shut the kids out of school because they didn't have it, found more money, and then boom, their budget reserves the next 2 years almost double. So each year they say they need all this money, they don't spend it, and they stick millions of it back into their reserves. Then they pull all that money out of the reserves and into the operating budgets. Then they have to fund that with an increase from budgets from the county. And the only way they could do that is with a massive property tax increase in 2014, even though they were sitting there with over $20 million in reserves. Subsequently, Clay County in Tennessee tried to do the same thing that Sumner County did with locking their kids out of schools. Therefore, the state changed the law to prevent a budgetary lockdown from ever happening again. State law allows for a continuation budget into the next year. If the commission doesn't approve a budget for the new fiscal year, this includes the schools. If a budget for the schools is not approved by the commission before the end of August, the schools will continue operating on the current year's budget. There's no budget cut. There's no reduction in funding for schools. They are always fully funded in accordance with state law. I'm going to expand upon this in a little bit. I want to move forward a little bit to 2019 when I was on the commission and the narrative of using teachers as pawns for a tax raise. When I do my budgets, I put my priorities at the top, as most of you probably do. Obviously, teachers have not been a priority in Sumner County when they were thrown under the proverbial bus at the last minute back in August 2019, being used as political pawns to cover up poor planning and poor budgeting, as well as providing cover for ulterior motives. When the director of schools takes the position that teachers are underpaid, there's an unstated assumption that others are responsible for any failure of his leadership and lack of proper budgeting on the school board's behalf to adequately plan for those pay increases. In essence, what the director of schools and the school board did in August 2019 into the last minute is said that they will decide when and where teachers get pay raises without any warning or notice to the county commission, who is responsible for funding those pay raises. None of the board members at that time made any amendments to their budgets earlier that year during the budget process in the county to try to address increasing the pay of 2,200 certified employees or teachers prior to springing this on the county commission at the 11th hour, essentially forcing a crisis that previously did not exist. Instead, they expected the hardworking taxpayers of this county to bail them out for their poor planning and lack of foresight in funding sources outside of a property tax increase. They could have mentioned this months or years in advance, but they didn't. The director of schools mentioned it officially and for the first time to the commission in a subcommittee of the commission a week before the final budget vote. And folks, if you think finding $8.8 million on a recurring fashion out of a fixed budget a week before you vote on the budgets is fiscal responsibility or even wisdom, we're going to have to agree to disagree if you think that's okay, because it's not okay. There was one main reason for the property tax increase in 2019, and it wasn't about teachers. It was to increase the county's borrowing capacity or credit card limit so they could build a $112 million judicial center and parking garage in Gallatin. If elected officials had only asked for the property tax increase to borrow for this new judicial center and parking garage at that time, more than likely the vote without using teachers as pawns would have been flatly rejected by taxpayers. So the age-old adage is to take something unpopular, you create a false narrative around subjects like children, education, healthcare, emergency services, et cetera, in order to use them as pawns in order to achieve ulterior motives and objectives. So that's what happened in 2019. They would not have passed the tax increase without throwing the teachers under the bus a week before we entered that budget process. And I'm gonna get to alternate funding that we could have done, and this is what irritates me the most when we move forward. But just to recap, back in August 2019, the county had $294 million in debt 2 years ago. Before that tax increase, their debt capacity, credit card was maxed out. County could not borrow any more money until 2023. So they raised property taxes using teachers as pawns immediately instead of waiting 4 years. Now, 2 years later, we have $414 million in debt with plans to next month, believe it or not, to borrow $13 million more for projects around the county caused by irresponsible growth management. So you can see what property tax increases and growth gets you. It is not prosperity, it's more debt. Be glad we're not in Williamson County. No offense to my Williamson County friends in here. They're almost $1 billion in debt. Growth does not pay for itself. So I want to talk about the 2020 and 2021 budget cycles, last year and this year. So what we've noticed several years now, starting back in 2012, which I talked about earlier, is that the school board is steadily, in some years substantially, increasing the reserves every year in their school budgets by not spending their budgeted funds. What they're doing is budgeting their expenses way over what their actual reserves are. And then they're gonna balance those expenses out of their reserves. That's kind of like you doing your monthly budget and saying, well, our monthly budget is $8,000, but we're gonna spend $13,000, and then we're gonna pull it out of our savings account to balance the budget. That's pretty much what's happening here. This creative accounting practice allows them to reduce their overall reserves to appear only to have a few $1,000,000 left over for fiscal stability. However, this information is partially accurate, and it's in a grossly inaccurate manner. The school board throughout the year will then start making budget transfers every month that the commission has to vote on and pass on its consent agenda for approval. So by the end of the year, the school board has transferred millions and tens of millions of dollars back into their reserves, increasing their total overall budget more than the previous year. Therefore, this increases the mandatory amount the state requires us to fund them every year. It's a creative accounting practice I like to call Common Core County Math. So during last year's budget cycle, Commissioner Mo Taylor and I tried to reduce the tax rate by 12 cents and match the $8.8 million for teacher raises out of the $40.5 million school board reserves now by actually putting that into the budget and leaving it there. Reducing the tax rate by 12 cents would have provided much needed tax relief to our citizens while ensuring that our teachers continue to receive funding for the raises they could have had years ago without using teachers as pawns to push an unnecessary property tax increase in 2019. So last year's tax levy proposal was a win-win for everybody, especially teachers. They could have had their personal finances increase and a property tax decrease. Our proposal last year, by reducing the tax rate out of their reserves and using their reserves, would have still left them with approximately $31.7 million in their reserves. Then after holding back the statutory $10 million approximately required by the state, the school board would have roughly $21 million in reserves. And that's after funding teacher pay raises permanently without raising taxes. So keep in mind, a lot of people who have been to our county commission meetings know that I get interrupted often. Not necessarily because I'm procedurally incorrect, it's just because they don't like what I say. There were attempts to interject straw arguments with my proposal of you can't pay for recurring expenses out of a one-time fund, which is true. You can't pay for recurring costs out of one-time funds. However, if you actually move what you have year after year on a recurring basis out of reserves and into the actual budget and leave it, instead of pulling it back out to pad and inflate your reserve numbers, that amount in the budget is forever there, or more clearly stated, it's recurring and fully funded. All the school board has been doing is putting the money they never really needed back into the reserves every year from their budgets and increasing it along the way. Citizens have to ask why. Why didn't they simply fund teacher pay raises years ago if they really were concerned about doing what's right for our teachers? The answer is simple. They executed a politically expedient ploy in 2019 to use teachers as pawns in order to push a property tax increase for a new judicial center that they wanted now, instead of waiting 4 years to borrow that money without a tax increase. So this year's budget cycle, we could have taken the same approach. Reduce the tax rate to match the $8.8 million for teacher raises and reduce your property taxes out of this year's now $50 million reserves. Last year's $40.5 million. This year's $50 million they had in reserves. So, but if we had done that, the school board would still have $39 million left over in reserves. And after holding back the amount required by the state for fiscal stability, they would have approximately $28 million still left in reserves. This amount would still be 2.5 times more than what was required by the state. So, but we tried to do something different. We tried to reduce the tax rate this year out of our county budgets and not out of the school board's reserves. We weren't really given a chance to do that, which it's not surprising most of the time. So what we did, I moved and Commissioner Mo Taylor seconded to reduce the tax rate by 13 cents this year out of what the county can control. And each penny on the tax rate is almost $650,000. So reducing this amount of money would reduce your property tax bill. So that's what's important to understand here. So when we try to do that, we found out that what the funding requirement is for Sumner County schools. So the state puts a mandate on the counties, you have to fund each the school board at the same rate you funded last year. So when you pad your budgets and put more back in every year, you keep on increasing that amount that we're required to fund you. So it's a way to keep on padding the budgets. So this year, our mandatory amount, based on the information that was available at the time and we were given by the state, there was $104 million. However, when you looked at our budgets, we were giving the school board $112 million. So don't ever let anybody say that the schools aren't fully funded. Not only are the schools fully funded, they're always overfunded in a literal sense. We are already always exceeding the amount that's required by state law to do it. So just want to clarify that out because I don't want any, you hear the rhetoric and hyperbole saying, fully fund, we're not fully funded. Yes, you are fully funded. You're overfunded. I mean, we're giving you more money than required by state law every year. So what it came down to this year, I looked at the numbers based on the school board's budget and what's the state and federal's amount of funding for the schools and the county's amount of funding for the schools. We were basically giving them $28 million more than required by law this year. So the numbers are there for people who take the time to dig into them. And again, they're basically based on the only accurate numbers that we've been given. So again, we try to do this to help relieve your tax burden, to help fund teacher pay raises, and still fully fund the schools. But they don't want to do those things because they have to have the tax rate high, because the higher the tax rate is, comparative to what our revenue neutral tax rate is, and that's a whole nother discussion. But our tax rate is high because our tax bills that you get are high. And they have to do that because it increases their borrow capacity. It's all about borrowing more money. It's growing government. If you look at our budgets every year, big government, big government, big government. Well, my time is up, but let me conclude with this. There was a resolution in Sumner County passed almost 10 years ago to be debt-free by 2023. Yeah. As of today, our yearly debt payments, which are approximately $36 million, yearly debt payment, would be the cash equivalent of having a brand new elementary school built and staffed every year. Think about this. If we had these debt payments as cash, we could have saved and paid for the entire judicial system project or a new 3 multi-school campus in 3 to 4 years with no property tax increases. Dave Ramsey likes to say, debt is dumb, cash is king. I got to agree with Dave. I get lectured from the floor of the commission saying, well, Mr. Mansfield, government doesn't work like you think it should or like business does. And that's the problem. Government doesn't work the way it should because it doesn't work in the real world. It's an upside down world we live in, and unfortunately. So appreciate you guys letting me come and talk to you today. I know I covered a lot of information. Don't want to confuse you or lose you, but I write about a lot of this stuff. If you can follow me on my Facebook page, just Jeremy Mansfield, District 11 County Commissioner. All of this stuff is stuff I've written and talked about in the past. I want to encourage you guys. Somebody asked, what can you do to overcome wit and wisdom? What can you do to overcome critical race theory and Marxism in the schools and racism in the schools and bad curriculum? It takes 11 people to change the direction of your kids' future in this county. 11 people. We need you to run for school board. That's all it's going to take, 11 people. And maybe even just 8. I don't know what the majority vote would be. I guess maybe 8 people. 8 people. It's a small minority of people. A small minority of people are controlling your kids' future that you guys don't agree with. So you guys run for office, please. Anybody can do it. I did it. I didn't know what I was doing. If I can do it, you guys can do it. So thank you guys very much. God bless you guys, and keep pounding.
Well, what do you think? Anybody want some quarters? Thank you so much. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Really appreciate the time. So here's the thing: is that when we were putting this presentation together, this event together, we really wanted people to come here and learn how the schools affect your taxes, how the budget is approved, how the schools really affect properties, and we really want you guys to be able to understand, because a lot of people, especially before COVID, had no idea what was going on, right? And so as you've learned already, Lynn Weaver, Representative Terri Lynn Weaver, and at the state level, and they have Jeremy Mansfield as commissioner, and they approve the budget and the stuff that goes in back and forth with the budget and the commissioners. You know, I know that
I'm 44 years old, so I've been around a little while, and so I know that almost with every election or budget or anything, what's the number one thing that's talked about to raise the budget? Schools, right? It's always schools. We need stuff for schools. We need schools. And so, I've just over the years gone like, well, if we keep giving money to the schools, why do they need more every single year? Like, what's happening? And I know a lot of teachers, and then I'm like, well, it's not going to you guys. So where's it going? And so I just encourage you guys to get involved in going to the commissioners' meetings. When the budget comes around for the schools, get to know your commissioners. So I moved here from California, a little more on that later, but you guys have such different government here than where I came from. I had to relearn everything here. And there's 24 commissioners here in Sumner County. And some cities have commissioners, some counties have commissioners, some don't. I'm like, okay. It's like Tennessee came here and was like, hey, we're just going to make it fun. And we're just going to say this county does it this way and this county does it this way. And I'm like, oh, my word. So what we really want to do today is really for you to walk away informational and hopefully knowing more about how the schools work, how curriculum gets in, how the schools affect your money. Right? Because taxes are always going up. I don't know when a tax has ever gone down, right? And so, and Hendersonville Sumner County is growing like crazy. And here in Middle Tennessee, I think we can all agree that almost every county here is growing. Can we all agree that? Like it's just growing like crazy. So really want you guys to understand that. So I hope you got a little bit there from Jeremy, and whatever county you're in, that you start going and paying attention, either at city council or commissioners or anything like that. So thank you so much, Jeremy. So let's give him another round of applause because that's a lot of work. A lot of work. Okay, all right, well, wonderful. So the next person we're going to be bringing to the stage, I met her, Dr. Elizabeth Meyers. Oh gosh, it feels like I've known her for forever because she is so knowledgeable. I could probably sit and talk to her for days on end and still not get to the end of all the knowledge that she has, and still just be intrigued with what she has to say. She is just an amazing woman. Dr. Meyers is an independent research consultant and education advocate, and you are going to see that here. She has spent 30 years in education. I think she kind of knows what she might be talking about, right? 30 years. 20 of which were a public school teacher and an in-service developer and facilitator. She worked as a consultant in the development of a new private school in Louisiana, where she lived until 2019. So it's kind of crazy. She's newly here. I moved here in 2018. She moved here in 2019. A lot of newbies here. She served 2 years as a superintendent and currently sits on its board of directors. She has traveled to Japan to study its education system, has worked as a research intern at the U.S. Department of Education. I think she might know a few things, huh? And is a contributing author of a book on education, numerous journal articles, and conference presentations covering issues such as teacher attrition, education information management, education policy, school board management, and political culture. She received her doctorate from Southeastern Louisiana University, where she was awarded the Preston B. Allison Outstanding Dissertation Award. Wow. For her research on the effects of political culture on education policy. I think she might know a little bit. She has worked with numerous legislators on educational issues and helped draft a data transparency bill. So important, transparency, right? That was signed into Louisiana law in 2014. She is a strong advocate of classical education and parental rights. Please give a huge round of applause for Dr. Elizabeth Meyers.
Tennessee, I thought that I was moving to a more conservative state. And then I had deja vu when I got here. And so I'm going to talk today about Louisiana, because when I came here, and bear with me because I'm going to put a lot of data up here, but when I moved here in 2019, I had deja vu, and it was a similar political system that I'm looking at. And it was, you have to understand, Louisiana in 2011, underneath the Republican darling Bobby Jindal, brought John White, a Mayor Michael Bloomberg appointee from New York, to run Louisiana's education system. And I testified against his appointment with the state board. And so I move here and find that a similar situation had occurred. When I got here, similar policies and practices were being implemented in Tennessee. And so what I want you to understand first and foremost, and I don't have time today to talk about it in terms of critical race theory, is critical race theory comes from a long line of critical theories. And critical theory, if you go back and Marx and all of those different people, critical theory has at its root a continual looking at life through the bad lens. Everything is bad. So it's just this continual building of resentment. You have critical theory, and then you have critical legal studies, and then you have critical race theory, which has blossomed into critical fat studies, critical queer theory, all these other different critical theories. And what those theories are, when they have the word critical in front of it, is that it is to build on that resentment. It's just this continual bombarding people with darkness. It just is. And you have to ask yourself why. Why this continual bombarding? Happy people don't become revolutionaries. Happy people are content. And you can't change and create a revolution if people are content. So you have to stoke resentment. So when I moved here in 2019, I had, again, that deja vu moment, and basically looked at your Commissioner of Education as being very similar to John White in Louisiana. So I'm going to cover three things today, and hopefully you'll walk away with a little more understanding. One of the things about being an educator, and I think if you're a teacher here, you get it, but Louisiana is famous for it, is we're going to fix education. So we bring in, somebody said this is a good program, so they bring it in. No pilot programs, no true research study on whether what you brought in did what it said it was going to do. And so we end up with, oh, that didn't work. We toss that on the pile, and then we bring in another program, and then we bring in another. It was not unusual for me to have a new set of standards sitting on my desk 2 weeks before school started. Oh, by the way, you have to do that this year. And if you're a teacher, you probably are well aware of that happening quite frequently. And so I'm going to talk about three different things. The similarity between what I said, what happened in Louisiana, and what I see happening now in Tennessee. And the achievement outcomes of the Louisiana students underneath all of these programs. And then the ideology that's in the current curriculum that I believe Sumner, Wilson, and Rutherford that I know of have adopted. And so one of the things about Louisiana you need to know, it's very different in some ways. Not always, but in some ways it's very different than Louisiana. Louisiana from its inception, and I mean going back 100 years, from the inception of its universal public education system has always had a highly centralized education system. The state makes the decisions, the districts follow. Even when the districts are told they have decision-making ability, they really don't, because for so many years they've relied on the state to tell them what to they don't know how. They've never been given this responsibility. It's always been the state mandating things. And so it's not that easy just to throw them the rope when they don't even know how to do that. And so she understood, I think, a little bit after I gave her some of the history of Louisiana's education system. And so when Louisiana adopts something, it goes down to all of the districts. It's not like this district does this or this district does that. The framework is already set up, so they might choose this curriculum and they might choose that curriculum, but the framework is going to keep them fairly limited. As my friend said, we used to have a fence, now we're in a cage. We had a little bit of room, now we're in a cage with Common Core. So having said that, hopefully you can see this. If you can't, I'll just kind of give you what it is. There are two programs in Louisiana that have been in effect for quite a while, for at least 10 years. And one of them is the Teacher Leader Program. And the Teacher Leader Program is this program that's going to create professional development through these leaders that they bring in and they train them to go back to the districts. And again, the state trains them, the state sends them back to the districts. And so you can see that pipeline from the state to the districts. And you're not going to see a lot of leeway between what happens in one district and what happens in another. It's going to be very minimal what happens. And so you have the teacher leader, which is very similar to what Tennessee is now doing with the instructional support network that you received the federal grant for, which I'll speak to in just a minute. And so Louisiana has been focused on teacher leaders, creating those networks of teacher leaders, and then this idea of being able to evaluate the curriculum so that you get the highest quality instructional materials. So now we have this terminology, high quality instructional material. And both of those show up here in both of these documents, that they're focused on that. Now in Louisiana, the state breaks it up. And so you have three different categories in Louisiana of curriculum. You have Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, which they kind of took the federal law had this terminology in it, and so Tennessee uses this, not Tennessee, Louisiana uses Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. When they evaluate Tier 1, it's of the highest quality. Tier 2, kind of reaches but has some problems, and Tier 3 does not qualify. Why do I say that? Because if you look up here on Tier 1, most of the curriculum you're now adopting is on Louisiana's Tier 1 curriculum. In other words, Tier 1 has Wit and Wisdom. Tier 1 has Amplified. Tier 1 has CKLA. Tier 1 has EL Education, or what's called Open Up Resources. That's in Tier 1. Okay, so what? What does that mean? Well, why choose Tier 1? Talking to some of the teachers and talking to some of the district leaders in Louisiana, they were essentially coerced into taking Wit and Wisdom. That was the preferred curriculum a number of years ago. And so how did they coerce them? Well, Louisiana has an accountability system. And that accountability system has been in place since about 1999. I think it was the first year that we had testing underneath that accountability system. That means that schools that don't do well on that state test will get dinged publicly. Their district will be A or B or F. If you are in a certain category, a failing category for so many years, they will take your school district. They either take the school away from you or take the district away from you. And so when you're told that if you get Tier 1 curricula, your students will do better on the assessment, and therefore you won't get dinged by the accountability system, you're not leaving them with much choice. I mean, what district's going to go, no, I'm going to go ahead and just take Tier 3 and take my chances? You're not going to see that happen. So many, many, many districts opted for the Tier 1, which is why we have in the 66 public school districts, about 50 of them have the Wit and Wisdom in there. And so then I started looking, because Louisiana got the same grant, but they just got it before you did. So your current commissioner, research is supposed to, number one, support the need for what you're proposing, and number two, that what you're going to do to support whatever needs you have said, it has efficacy, it's going to be effective, that there's research that it's effective. Well, the first thing I noticed when I was looking, and I read every single research document that they put in the grant, every single one of them. And what I found first was a little strange. I found that a lot of them were about math textbooks, not literary textbooks. So that was a little strange, that there were a bunch of them about math. And then the other thing was I noticed Louisiana popping up throughout all of these documents, all of these pieces of research. And in fact, this particular document here, the key findings, all three of the key findings are on Louisiana. And they were talking about how incredibly, how high the number it was for teachers in Louisiana, that they were much more likely to be utilizing Common Core resources and teaching Common Core than other states. And I'm like, yeah, because it's a highly centralized school system in that state. It wouldn't be unusual for that many teachers to be on Common Core material, particularly when they are told that if they open their mouth that they would be fired, which has happened in a lot of districts in our state. And so what you'll notice is, or what I noticed in the grant was this word high quality, content rich, high quality instructional materials, content rich, over and over and over again. So I started looking for what's the definition of that. Guys, definitions are important. The first thing you look at when you start looking at any kind of law or legislation is how do they define what they're talking about. So I'm looking for the definition. No definition. However, there are two organizations that they're going to rely on that are going to tell them what high quality instructional materials are. One is EdReport, which started initially as a consumer report, like, if you will, to tell districts and school systems whether that curriculum was Common Core aligned. That was its original job. I thought we got rid of Common Core in Tennessee. Well, yeah, we all did. So EdReports is one of them. And by the way, not my words, go to their website. They say it themselves, that they developed their rubrics and their evaluation system and used Common Core state standards and the next generation science standards to inform those rubrics. So if you're using Common Core material to inform your rubric, what kind of curriculum do you think you're going to get? I mean, we're not dumb. They think we are, but we're not. Oh, and by the way, the second organization that's going to determine what high quality is, Louisiana Department of Education. Now, I love my former state. I love the people in that state. The education system has some serious problems and no one wanted to address it. They do try to address it. They throw things at the wall and hope it sticks, and bless their heart, there's teachers that work their little hearts out and then they throw them under the bus a lot of times, which is very sad. And so in your Tennessee Department of Education federal grant, you have two organizations, one of them being Louisiana. Louisiana ranks 48th to 50th, depending upon the year. There's a joke in my state, thank God for Mississippi. So Tennessee is going to utilize Louisiana concepts and Louisiana programs. Okay, I'm trying to understand that. And again, I talked to you about the coercion thing on adopting the Tier 1 curricula. Another thing that they did in choosing Tier 1 is the fact that they, if you choose Tier 1 curricula, then you can use the state contract and get discounts for buying your materials. If you choose to use Tier 3, well, then you're going to have to use your MFP money, which I think Tennessee you call the BDP. You don't get to utilize the discount if you choose to go into, well, what do you think districts are going to do? They're going to choose Tier 1. And so there's a document that came out in the Chiefs for Change, which is an organization founded by Jeb Bush on education. And this document has come out recently. Oh, there's a familiar face. Came out recently, and it talks about the title, Incentivizing which is actually not so interesting considering that my former superintendent happened to be on the board of directors of Chief for Change, and your commissioner is now a member of that particular organization. Okay? And then in this incentivizing document, in the very beginning, it talks about research shows that high-quality instructional materials, along with basically professional development, will increase student achievement. Yet when I read the research in the very grant that she received federal funding for and is now implementing, the Instructional Support Network, which, by the way, Sumner County is the mentor of the area. Wilson County is one of the mentees, and Wilson County is where I live. And so Wilson County will be mentored by Sumner County in this instructional network program that's being rolled out. And so what I want to show you is, okay, so Louisiana's a little farther along. We've done the Wit and Wisdom. We've adopted a lot of these policies that are now coming into Tennessee. How has that affected the students? Because isn't that what it's all about? Isn't it about the kids? Well, at least in my mind, it's about the kids. For me, it's always been about the kids. So when I say I'm passionate about education, I'm really passionate about learning. I am not passionate about the education system, which I have spent the last 15 to 20 years fighting, so that the kids get a better education. So what does that look like? What is the result? This is 4th grade. And you'll notice the drop there in 4th grade. To be fair, though, that's a little piece of the pie, if you will. It's not really pie. But what it's done is I've squeezed it down so you can see up close the changes over the time period. But when you look at the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is the national test, and the reason I look at the national test is because of the fact that we've had some manipulation in Louisiana of the state test. One of the things I asked here is, does your Department of Education have to show what the raw score to scale score cut is? Because that's going to show you, remember when you get the little thing for your kids, it's going to show whether they're basic, or whether they have mastery, or whether they have advanced. Is that how y'all do it on yours here? Okay. Well, what we found out was under our former superintendent, they changed the cut scores. And one of my friends had to sue the state 6 times to get that data. And on the 6th time, the department was threatened with contempt of court by the judge if they didn't turn that data over. And they finally did, and so my friend actually put it out on the internet. And it showed that in 3rd grade English language arts, students had to get about 22 questions correct out of, I think, 66 questions to pass. And in order to get the mastery label, they only had to get about 30 out of those 66 correct. Because that cut score is determined by the department, and they can move it around at will. So we argued for a law that said it had to be published. Anytime that you could get a chance to open sunlight on something, transparency, I've been pushing for transparency laws ever since I've been here, every kind of transparency law in the Department of Education. But on the national test, which can't be manipulated by the state, on the national test, you have a scale from 0 to 500. So I pulled back and looked at the big picture, and you'll notice over here, it's fairly flatline. Louisiana has spent years and years and years and years and years and billions of dollars. This is the return on investment of that money. If we break it down by race, you'll notice that there's a huge drop for the Hispanic and Black population and just a little bump up, which actually isn't up, they're regaining ground that they had lost before. Same thing for 8th grade. In 8th grade, you'll notice flat line in achievement. If you look up there for breaking it down by race, you notice flat line by race. What about high school? Well, they don't test in high school. The national test is only 4th grade and in 8th grade. So you look to the ACT. January, there was a big story that hit Louisiana. My friends always send me stuff all the time. They don't think I've left. They think I'm just visiting y'all. They were talking about wanting me to come back and buying me a house and something. But I love it here, by the way. I absolutely love it here. January 2021, big news story came up. And that was that for the third year in a row, so you can't blame it on COVID, because it's the third year in a row, K through third grade student reading has declined to the point where half of those students are below grade level. So please talk to me about high quality instructional materials. Do you really want Louisiana to be the ones who are making that decision for you? No curriculum, ladies and gentlemen, not one, zero, not one, is value free, because people are involved in creating it. They're going to determine what goes in it, does not go in it, how it will be assessed, how it will be taught, etc. Nothing is value free. And in this country, we have been following this for a very long time. We're seeing the fruit of old ideas just coming. The fruit's just blossoming now, even though the seed was planted years ago. A focus on psychological versus knowledge-based education. And so when you look at EL education, I'm going to jump into the ideology very quickly as my time is running out. EL education, I don't have to review their curriculum. All I have to do is look at what their values are. They're open. I mean, I can move my tinfoil hat around if you want me to, but these are their words. They're not my words. They're their words. And so one of the things about EL education is they say that they are an aspiring anti-racist company. Anti-racist is just another word for critical race theory. Whenever they did their seminar this year, what matters most to them? Racial justice, social emotional learning. They're telling you out loud. Their professional development, exploring EL's anti-racist educational equity stance. They're telling you. In the K-8 curriculum, they're telling you that they're going to explicitly educate children about racism and racial justice. They're going to help students develop a critical eye for racism in language, character, portrayals, and author's point of view. What that means is when they read literature, they're going to teach them to read literature and look for racism, race, gender, etc. When will they begin this? They tell you, kindergarten. And they will help them develop anti-racist practices and perspectives. They also say, that they're going to develop their social emotional learning, and they're going to develop their character of habit, or habits of character. And then they said they're going to develop, now this is their words, this is on their website, it's not, okay? They say they're going to help them develop a critical eye, remember that word critical, okay? Critical eye for racism in literature. And so they decided to give you an example where racism doesn't explicitly exist. They're going to tell you how to show them to look at it that way. So they're going to read Peter Pan in 3rd grade, Module 3, and they're going to explore the racial and gender stereotypes in Peter Pan. And then after they do that, then they're going to write, one of their writing assignments will be to fix the problems that they found within the text. We're not going to read Peter Pan as a fantasy. We're not going to read Peter Pan because it's a fun story. We're not going to read Peter Pan for the good that we can see in it. But we're going to read it by putting on these glasses that only see certain things. And I'll end with this. I started with the path determines the destination, and I have to give my pastor you're on that path. What path are we on? Where are we going? These particular quotes come from different people that come from different countries. And these are people who have written books from 1988 all the way up to 2020. But I'd like to read two to you before I end. One of them is from Jana Kandelov from Czechoslovakia, which if you ever read Czechoslovakian history, it would break your heart. We Americans, become numb to the signs of creeping socialism. I see it. Why? Because she's been on that path before. I see it. I understand it because I've been there. I've seen what happens when you're not allowed to think certain thoughts or say certain things, when your history is rewritten, and when you are taught to genuflect to the right ideas and people. And then Xi Jinping of China. Stalin may have killed people, but he used security forces. Mao, however, turned his own people against each other. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end with this. I took my own child out of the district that I taught in because of what they were doing. He was 17 years old. When I took him out, I did diagnostics on my child and found out that even though the state test said one thing, my child was 2.5 years behind in math. And he had a B in algebra 2 when I pulled him from the school. And so, number one, these are your children. These are your children. And I want to go to Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 5, which in that verse, hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That is what we are to see. We have one true God. The next section is how we should respond to him. We should love the Lord with all of our heart, all of our soul, and all of our strength. But if you drop down a few more verses to verse 7, it said, teach your children diligently. That's right. Teach your children diligently. It is not been given to us, and I am just as guilty, pointing to me as well, because I left some of my kids in the school when I should have pulled them out. But God did not give the school system your children. That's right. God did not give us our children so that we can send them off and let someone else inculcate them with their values. And I told someone the other day, and I'm repeating what someone told me a number of years ago. If you do not teach your children to love Jesus, they will teach your children to hate him. That's right. So I stand before you, humbled that you allowed me to speak to you, and hopeful that you will stand up and say, no more. Thank you.
Was I right? Or was I right? I got goosebumps. She is phenomenal. And I'm going to tell you this, everyone. That is just the tip. Very, very, very tip of the iceberg of what she knows and the amount of information that she has. So thankful to God that she is here in Tennessee and that she moved here in 2019. And because only God knew the fight that was on our hands, right? Only God knew that. And we always know, and God knows everything. God knew when he created the world that this was going to happen, right? He knew, you know? And that's where he puts people in place, though, that if they're willing, he will use them. And she is just willing. And so, amazing, amazing woman. So, there's been a lot. I mean, we've learned a lot of government today, haven't we? A lot. Probably more than you learned in government in high school, right? So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you stand up real quick, okay? Because we got to get the blood flowing to the brain, right? Because there's a lot more to go. So kind of like, stretch a little bit, get a little, okay. All right. okay? So just get the blood flowing there. Take a drink of water, Okay. All right, now you can sit back down. Okay. So this is the reason why we have this in the middle of the day. One, you can get a good breakfast and luncheon. You can come here, and then afterwards you can have a great dinner, right? So plan that purposefully. So all right, so wonderful. So Dr. Beth Meyers, Elizabeth Meyers, is phenomenal. She is a strong woman. She is just fabulous. And I'm going to bring up another woman that came on the scene back in April of this year. And I am so happy that I have been able to meet this woman, that I have been able to have many conversations with her. And she is just a phenomenal woman. And I'm talking about Miss Robby Steeman. She is a former B-1 pilot with 1,000+ combat hours over Afghanistan. Okay? Yes. Amazing. Before I go any further, can we have any military or veterans please stand so we can honor you, please? Any military or veterans? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So combat hours over Afghanistan and 100+ weapons on target in support of Operation Ending Freedom. She left the Air Force in 2013 to be a full-time mom, so she left one war zone to go to another war zone, right? Which is still her primary mission. She is a native Texan, graduating from the University of Texas with a degree in aerospace engineering. She started the Williamson County chapter of Moms for Liberty in April of 2021. And has led the group, now 2,500 followers, to take on critical race theory and failed curriculum in Williamson County and the state of Tennessee. She is a mom of 3, a cancer survivor, a patriot, a believer, and a resident of Williamson County, and we are so blessed to have her here. Please welcome Robby Steeman.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I thought when I that my defense of the Constitution was pretty much over at that point, but here I am called into action once again, and this is for the kids. I know it's going to take a couple minutes to load. Okay. We've been hearing about the Wit and Wisdom curriculum. I've got about 20 minutes to tell you about it, and it's not enough, so I'll get right into it, and I'll probably move quickly. So, Moms for Liberty, we're the Williamson County chapter. We were the first Moms for Liberty in Tennessee, and now there's 6. And nationwide, we have 95 chapters in 28 states and roughly 35,000 members. And Sumner County should be the 96. You guys know me, and I'll cover the terminology. The one to pay attention to social emotional learning. Should I just do the handheld microphone?
Test? Okay. Much better. Social emotional learning. It's teaching your child how to manage their emotions, how to cope, how to develop identities, to feel and show empathy. That's really kind of how it started. First of all, I don't need the government to teach my child how to deal with their emotions. But even if it started with good intentions, most things that start that way by the government is not how it ends up now. It really is a vehicle for social justice. And social emotional learning is feelings. They present subject matter in schools, and then they say, how does it make you feel? And then the teachers are encouraged share your feelings too. So it's all feelings, feelings, feelings. And do you think that they're positive, uplifting feelings? No. That is the big thing with Wit and Wisdom. It is end-to-end social emotional learning with little pockets of CRT. Types of curriculum, you have explicit, so that's what's on the written page. That still doesn't come home in your child's backpack anymore. It's probably on a Chromebook, or in Wit and Wisdom, there's maybe 1 copy, maybe 3 copies in the classroom, but the bottom line is you don't get to see it. It doesn't come home. And even if it did, you still don't see the implicit curriculum, which is the teacher's manual, which is the repetitive beating into the kids, the ideology, the activities, the exercises that they have their kids do. You have the null curriculum, what's not taught. Founding documents, the actual history of Marxism, a fair, balanced representation of our own, the positive aspects of our own history. That would be a null curriculum. And then the supplemental. Have you heard of Brain Pop? Achieve 3000, the Gale database. Those are all things available to your child that the teacher can just log onto the internet and present before them. Is considered supplemental curriculum, and it's not vetted, and it goes through no approval process. That's a whole other issue. So jumping into Wit and Wisdom, when you take a step back and you look at it as a whole, and in Sumner County you have K through 12. Williamson has K through 5, so that's all I'm going to cover today, and I probably won't make it to the 5th grade. But when you look at it from the God's eye perspective, and you see these common threads, some of these topics are in all grades, but some kind of crop up every other grade. Suicide ideation first appears in the 1st grade, then again in the 3rd grade, and then in the 4th and the 5th. You got mean white people, that's kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 5th. Extreme emotion, because it is social emotional learning, that's all grades. Cannibalism in 1st, 3rd, and 4th, strangely. An anti-nuclear family. Then you have anti-America. It's arguably in kindergarten too, so all grades. Dark imagery, graphic death, all grades. Age-inappropriate topics. Now, when I say age-inappropriate topics, what might I be talking about? In kindergarten, murder. 1st grade, graphic mating and gender fluidity. 2nd grade, anti-police, anti-fire department. In the 3rd grade, very anti-church, introduces torture. The 4th grade has rape, murder, adultery, scalping and skinning of humans, and stillbirth. And then the 5th grade has excessive gore, excessive violence, drunkenness, and promiscuous relationships. So who wants to jump into this curriculum? We're going to cover the explicit, but for you to understand what the kids are really marinating in, there's a few books where I'll cover the implicit, so I'll go through the teacher's manual pages. Keep in mind the teacher's manuals are 400 to 500 pages long, so we're just going to hit the high points. Starting with kindergarten. Why mosquitoes buzz in people's ears. There's the mother owl with her owlet. But she comes back to the nest and she's told that the monkey killed her owlet. I have a 6-year-old daughter. She just finished kindergarten last June. And I had her look at this page and I said, what do you think about these animals? And she really looked at it for a few minutes and she says, they all look mad. Correct. And then she says, I see this monkey that wants to hurt the baby. Correct. So in this book, the monkey kills the baby owlet. The mother owl is so sad and depressed that she can't muster the enthusiasm to wake the sun, and therefore all the animals are angry about it. It's just a dark, depressing book that you're laying on kindergartners. This one is kindergarten module 1. So literally the first day of school, they may be exposed to this book. Rap-a-tap-tap. It's the story of Bojangles. I have this book at home. I left it on the kitchen counter. My daughter read through it. I have no issues actually with this book. It's actually a very positive book. Bojangles, with a smile, dances through all the pages, and all the people in this book are smiling too. It's a great story. There's possibly one person in this book that's not smiling, and this was as Bojangles, he dances past the open and closed doors, and you have the closed door on the far left with a white man, and he's looking the other way, and he looks kind of frowny. Now, fine. It's historically accurate. Some people probably weren't a fan. My daughter didn't notice it. Most kids are probably not going to focus in on that guy. They're just going to see the happy, smiling faces and move on with the story. But Wit and Wisdom won't permit that. It doesn't go with the agenda. And the social emotional part of it, the book is too happy. So they have this puppet exercise on page 319. And puppet 1 says, Rap-a-tap-tap is such a great book. What's your favorite part of the story? Puppet 2, silence. Puppet 1, didn't you hear me? I said Rap-a-tap-tap is such a great book. What's your favorite part of the story? Puppet 2 responds with, I like basketball. Puppet 1 says, basketball? There's no basketball in Rap-a-tap-tap. Arg. So how are we pulling negative emotions from a positive story? And then it says for the teacher, how would you feel if you were puppet number 1, and suggests the response would be, I would be mad, I would be frustrated. Moving on, I realize it's hard to see, so kind of hard for me to see too. Teacher's Manual, page 322. So again, a kindergartner probably focused on the waving people and the smiles and the dancing, but Wit and Wisdom has an agenda here. And it starts to pour it out, what was the color of the man behind the closed door? Look at the man at the closed door. Of all the pictures that you can look at, let's focus on the man at the closed door. He looks mad. He's frowning. He's pointed the other way. It goes on to say, to introduce racial oppression, that the man is frowning and has the door closed because of the color of Bojangles' skin. Now again, so now you've just brought social justice into an uplifting book about Bojangles, and it continues. It goes on about the color of his skin. I'm sorry, I can't read it too well, and it's small on this iPad, but, and then it goes on to do an exercise about the Harlem Renaissance. But I would submit that a kindergartner doesn't know what the original Renaissance was. So how are we going to teach him the Harlem Renaissance as this revival for African American creativity in the United States? And then to close, in the teacher's note here, it says that the word close is actually too complex to teach to a kindergartner, but because it is important for the narrative, we're going to use it anyway, so put it up on the word wall and you don't have to teach it. Again, this is English language arts. First grade, the seahorse, the shyest fish in the sea. This is part of a marine module. You guys have probably heard about this one. There you have it, the graphic mating. Now again, these are probably kids that still give their wish list to Santa Claus. They receive visits from the Easter Bunny. They get money from the Tooth Fairy, and they haven't had the birds and the bees talk. So how do you explain this? And of all the sea creatures they could have picked, they picked the seahorse, and it points out seahorses are the only male fish to get pregnant. It's time for the babies to be born. He works hard all day and night, bending, squeezing, pushing, shooting out hundreds of babies from his pouch. But then it takes it a step forward with this video about pygmy seahorses. The video is about 3 minutes long. It's actually fascinating. It's very well done, but it kind of gives the kicker in the last 10 seconds. It says, we humans tend to think of who we are as mostly fixed, but in the ocean, identity can be a fluid and mysterious thing. And then what does a teacher's manual focus on? The main topic is how seahorses have babies. They just want to focus, they want to hammer home that the daddy can be the mom. Brave Irene is the first introduction to suicide ideation. It's a really quite depressing story about Irene trudging through harsh conditions with a dress to deliver to her mother. But then at one point she falls into the snow, and it says, why not freeze to death, she thought, and let all these troubles end? Why not? She's already buried. But if your average first grader misses it, the teacher's manual goes on to instruct the kids to act out the scenes. And if you can make it through all of these suggestions. They're all pretty depressing, but the last one is the scene where she almost freezes to death and considers packing it in. Feelings, possibly the most perfect book for Wit and Wisdom. In the top left, it says, Alicia has the most beautiful curly hair of all my friends. And then the girl in the yellow is jealous, talking about her own stringy hair. She says, I'd like to choke Alicia. I hate Alicia. And then she snarls. And then on the right side, it's about the death of a pet, Whiskers, a mouse. Talks about Whiskers was sick, he was old. He was bound to die sometimes. And it shows the two kids digging a hole and burying Whiskers. It's a pretty depressing story. Most kids can relate with the death of a pet. It's pretty hard. But the teacher's manual instructs the children to review this story, to stay on it for 4 nights. The imagery here, just the child is angry, screaming about somebody taking his crayons. When you see at the bottom right, there's a little boy, he says, I just borrowed them. But there's little messages all throughout Wit and Wisdom. And at the very top, there's 2 birds up there. And one of them says, whatever happened to sticks and stones break my bones, but words could never hurt me. And the other bird, I can't read it from here, is like about that. So for us parents who are teaching, I teach my kids that when they fight. And so called me so-and-so. Well, sticks and stones. But here's Wit and Wisdom to teach them otherwise. From this book, Feelings, there's an exercise, and it wants them to talk about feelings represented in the book. But of all the feelings that you could choose, it gives you only 2 options, furious or sad. And then at the bottom of the left page, it just goes on all the different instances of fury in this book. The choking Alicia, yelling about the crayons. And then the right page, it just goes into all the times of sadness. So literally, the teacher is just giving them furious and sad. It's the same as the Bojangles book in kindergarten. And then a step further is it talks about ashamed. Ashamed means feeling bad about yourself, usually because you did something wrong. More on that later. In the teacher's manual, which is 506 pages, feelings are mentioned 639 times. Mad and angry leads the pack at 154, and joy is dead last at 4 mentions. The rough-faced girl is a Cinderella story, but the imagery is striking. She's before the fire, she's burned and singed. Her hair has been burned. Her skin is scarred at the hands of her sisters. And the story wraps up with her marriage to a spirit being. Second grade. That was all first grade. Johnny Appleseed. Great, we all know the song. You start flipping through the book, and there it is the mean white settlers. The Indians didn't like the white settlers because they chased them from their homes. And here's Johnny Appleseed to make the peace. The teacher's manual, of course, is going to hit on it. Why do the pioneers chase the Indians from their homes? Just in case your child missed it, let's talk about it. And there's a couple different versions of Johnny Appleseed. And up until reading Wit and Wisdom, I thought the Appleseed story was pretty uplifting. But it really chooses the dark tales. And here's a child's impression. In the wilderness, 1774, Johnny's mother and little brother die. His dad remarries another woman. He left the house because there's too many people in it. Then he met some animals and Indians. He planted seeds everywhere where he went. When Johnny got ill, he died. This has a cumulative effect on kids. The buffalo are back. We're talking about the settlers and the Indians. But it was settlers from the east and the American government that killed almost all the buffalo herds. The government bought huge tracts of land from the Indians and forced many Indians to go to reservations and sold the land to settlers. It says the government broke its treaties with the Indians. Soldiers and settlers were encouraged to shoot every buffalo they saw or drive whole herds over the cliffs in order to starve out the Indians. Most of the last wild buffalo went down in dust and gunfire, a death wind for the prairie. Now, in case they missed that, here's handout 3A, a response cards exercise. Implicit curriculum, anyone? Cut out these cards, which includes the buffalo, the settlers, the white settlers, the government, the prairie, and the president, and sort them into piles of good and bad. And in Wit and Wisdom, there's always notice and wonder. So this second grader notices, I noticed that the government was very, very mean to Indians. I wonder, why was the government so mean to Indians? That is all a child at this age is going to take from this. I'm sure you've heard about grade 2, module 3, civil rights heroes. This is 9 weeks of injustice training for second graders. From when they come back from Christmas break to when they leave for spring break. Injustice every single day. The teacher's manual mentions injustice 314 times in a 478-page manual. Tells them to develop a nonverbal sign for injustice and to make it every time they hear examples of injustice. It even encourages a protest song. There's for a lesson on prefixes, what do they choose? Injustice, unequal, inequality, unfair. For a lesson on suffixes, segregation, vocabulary, protest, refuse, marching. And then this is day 1. Point out the word injustice. Explain that unfair and injustice mean the same thing. Injustice is a stronger word. How do people respond to injustice? Explore injustice. I'm going to have to move on in the sake of time. All those mentions up until day 12, that's all day 1. And then it emphasizes the struggle for equal rights continues to this day. Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington, it's important to point out that this book omits the part about content of character. Has this picture of the firemen spraying down the kids in Birmingham. And what it says underneath is, it's not the best part of our history, it's also true. Not the picture that I would choose for a second grader, but just in case they miss it. Just in case they're like, oh, playing the hose is fun. What's the big deal? Wit and Wisdom's not going to let them get away with that. Instead, they have assessment 31A, in which they're to listen to this read aloud when peace met power, and it talks about blasting fire hoses, the all-white police force. They expected unfair arrests, beatings, or worse from police, that Eugene Bull Connor led the police and fire departments. Then you have a different voices point of view exercise. Well, it's going to be hard to read, but I'll give it my best. The first point of view is from a child, from a 14-year-old there that day. It says, we're looking across the street. Water explodes from the nozzles. Some kids fall down. The firemen turn up their hoses even higher. Water beats my back and shoulders and pushes me against the building. It feels like I'm being punched and kicked. The water tears my sweater. I'll be bruised. Point of view number 2, I think, is from a police officer. It says, a lot of them white kids, we are here to protect our citizens, the white citizens, that is. The city is segregated. It says, I see Commissioner Connor signal to the firemen. The firemen, the water's power is strong enough to tear the bark off of trees. I hope this will teach them a lesson. And then the third point of view is from the photographer. The firemen blast the kids with water. I can't believe my eyes seeing such violence against children. It looks like the water is really hurting them as it hits them in the head. Second grade babies. What are they going to pull from this? And then if that wasn't enough, they do assessments and exercises on it. These are some of the questions that they're asked. This is learning English language arts from this photograph. It's talking about, read the following sentence from the text. Suddenly water explodes from the nozzles. How would the meaning of the sentence change if the word explodes was changed to pours? And again, this is the picture that they're looking at for how many days? The next book is Ruby Bridges Goes to School. I'll have to pick up, oh, I'm out of time. All right. You guys get the idea. We didn't even make it through second grade. It's a emotionally charged curriculum. There is an agenda in all of it. It is graphic, it is negative, and it's just makes your child into an emotional thinker. Why? Because emotion is never wrong. There's no objectivity there. It's like your truth, your subjective truth, and that's all you need to know. So you're taking a child from kindergartner, bringing them all the way into high school to be an emotional thinker, leaving out the logic, the ration, the analysis, the actual facts, the actual history. And then under the Biden administration, they're going to marry that up with action civics. What is action civics? It's not going to your congressman, it's protesting. And then you're complete. You have raised an activist from kindergarten through the 12th grade. Thank you.
Wow. Oh, is she phenomenal or is she phenomenal? So, absolutely amazing. And I'm going to say, I pity the fool who messes with her. I mean, come on. So, well, right now what we're going to do is, we've heard from an educator. We've heard from a state rep. We've heard from a commissioner. We've heard from a mother. And now we're going to hear from 3 other parents that are here in Sumner County. And they're going to share with you their stories on what they have experienced with this curriculum and with the schools. So please welcome Steve, Aaron, and Daryl.
All right, well, good evening, and my name is Stephen King. I'm not the scary rider, although I think Jeremy Mansfield thinks I'm the real guy. But I'm Stephen King. This is Aaron Smith and Daryl Rogers, and we're going to share, like she said, we're going to just talk about our experiences with Wit and Wisdom and some other things. So, Aaron, you're going to share first. So,
thank you. I think I'm going to just go ahead and piggyback off of Moms for Liberty. They did not get to 4th grade, and my son was a 4th grader last year. He's 5th grade this year, and my oldest is a 7th grader. He was a 6th grader last year. So I'm going to read from a couple of the books that he read from last year, and then I have a story to tell. So, in George versus George, quoted from page 22, 4th graders are reading, Getting Drunk, Chasing Women. And this book is about George Washington and King George III. So, page 30, each side told a different tale about Lexington and Concord. Rebel newspapers reported that bloodthirsty redcoats burned houses, drove naked women into the streets, and butchered old men and infants. The king was told that rebel savages broke the rules of war by ambushing his army. Then they scalped fallen British infantry and cut off their ears. And page 48, meanwhile, the redcoats were trying to terrorize rebel supporters into giving up. Besides constantly stealing food and horses, they burned entire towns and villages, looted or seized people's houses, raped and murdered innocent civilians, and set fire to crops and timberland. We know war was bad. We know history is not what we want now. But for any book to have the word rape, naked women murdered in the hands of a 4th grader is wrong. And I don't, as parents, why are the people making these decisions can't see that? Sixth grade, Ramayana is mythology. The inappropriate content is it's based around a father lusting over his daughter. So that's a 6th grade book. 7th grade, the Canterbury Tales are read, and you might have read that in high school. But the inappropriate content has to be cut out. So we have a curriculum that we're having to cut out because it's inappropriate for the grade level it's in. 8th grade, All Quiet on the Western Front. I read that in high school. Not a bad book. Once again, you have to cut out the sexual content that's in the book when 8th graders are reading it. And the inciting question is, what are the psychological effects of war? Well, if you study what are the psychological effects of war, one day, are you going to want to support your country and do what you need to? Probably not, because we know it can be bad. And then a story. So a fourth grader comes into his mom's classroom one afternoon. Says, "Mom, guess what we read today?" "What?" Thinking, "Oh, did you read about a family going on a vacation? What did you read? What happy thing did you read?" "Well, you know, Mom, what a man and a woman does." "What's that?" "SEX." "Oh, you read about sex today?" "Well, not really. We were reading to ourselves, and we had to identify any words we didn't know about." So if you've talked to your child in the fourth grade about sex, that's not going to be a word they ask about. But if you haven't, now is your teacher going to be the one to explain to them about that? And that was my son one afternoon. And that was my point. That was my breaking point, that this curriculum is bad. It's emotionally bad for these kids. And this is what he read. It's from Walk Two Moons. Not a bad book, but it's from the perspective of a 13-year-old. Why are 10-year-olds reading a book from the perspective of a 13-year-old? "Isn't that interesting," Mr. Berkway said, "to find both? Isn't it interesting to discover that snowy woods could be death and beauty and even, I suppose, sex?" "Wow, literature. Did he say sex?" Ben said, copying the drawing. They had to pick out words they were unfamiliar with. What, I don't know this word, teacher. How many teachers are uncomfortable being presented with that? The teacher shouldn't be put in that position either. Ask your kids, what did you read today? Look up the books. Read them for yourself. That's what I did. I said, "Can you bring these home?" And I spent a night reading. And the more you educate yourself, the more you can see how emotionally charged, like Ms. Steeman said, that this curriculum is. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if we came to be educated or have church, right? But what I've got here is rather thick binder. And that's only for one child for 2 years. I don't think when I send my child to school to spend more time with an authority figure or a teacher, that I should have any doubt of what my child is going to be encountering that day. They spend more time with that teacher than they do me and my wife. You realize that, right? More waking hours are spent with teachers, administrators, than they are with us. And this is what they're getting. I come to you with a lot of emotion, folks. A lot of heartfelt emotion, a lot of disgruntled emotion. So bear with me, please. I have followed the school system a lot because my kids walk down the same hallways of the same school as I walk down. But my, are they different? I'm from a little town of Portland. If any of y'all heard of Portland, we're just almost in God's country up there. We're close, but we're not there yet. It's a little quaint town. We do a lot of hunting. We do a lot of fishing. We do a lot of riding four-wheelers. We experience God's land. So my kid goes to school one day, first day of school, relatively close to getting back into school. And a teacher asked him, "What did y'all do this summer to pass your time that you enjoy?" A little 9-year-old boy says, "I went rabbit hunting. I got to shoot rabbits. I got to shoot birds. I got to shoot my gun." She stopped him and said, "I don't want to hear any more about shooting in my classroom." I say that to say my child had to read the book called Woods Runner. Woods Runner is a very dark book. On chapter 5, it talks about slaughtering the people. On down through there, it says, slaughtered the peaceful settlers for no reason. Chapter 15, it was talking about they had 3 axes, 2 picks, tomahawk, a set of rail-splitting wedges, 6 of them, 4 slaughtering sticks, sticking knives, 4 butcher knives, and it goes on and on and on about an ice chisel, all survival tools for kids who were hiding in the woods. It gets better. So then they're going through there, and the redcoats was coming, and they'd already came into the town and taken, capturing, and killed everyone in there in this town. But it goes through and it says, and I do this respect for where we're at. Redcoats doing it because the redcoats ain't worth a tinker's damn following orders. It's in the book. And then it's talking about the damn Haitians. And then it says, why don't we like the British? They're all bad, every damn one of them. Leave off, damn it, leave off. 34 more was waiting with him as soon as he was outside, piled up, scattering like quail, streams of prisoners, thin as cadavers. Why? Talking about milk and rum, drinking milk and rum. Then they're talking about trying to get away and how they get away. It says, I'll take the guard, you take a brick and knock him over the head, trying to plan for their escape. We've come this far, and you let me hit him over the head with a brick. Hit him over the head hard, and we'll run like hell. So I did my due diligence as a parent, and I called my principal, which is what the district tells you to do, and said, what would happen if my son, when the teacher opened the door for him to go to the playground, and he says, let's run like hell? She said, well, I would have to discipline him. I said, I better not hear of it. You've got an authority figure teaching him that that's okay to say or do, but yet you're going to discipline him for it if he says it while he goes out the back door to the playground? And I'll end with this. This very book has the word gun, gunfire, gunshots 16 times. Killed, kill, kills 52 times. Rifle is mentioned 60 times. Yet my son can't explain what made him happy over the summer. Parents, I'm going to charge you, ask you to look inside what your kids are doing. I think we have put too much trust in our school district. It's not our teachers. Our teachers can only work. Our teachers can only work with what's in their toolbox, but our district provides the toolbox.
Well, we've got 2 kids in middle school, and about 4 or 5 years ago, we took our kids out of private school to put them into Sumner County schools, and that's how highly we thought about the school system up here. And of course now, I'm not so sure anymore. and of course that was before Wit and Wisdom. And so my kids are in middle school, and you know, a lot of things have been said tonight about the curriculum, specific examples. You know, and I just want to say what's on my heart. I'm not going to give I'm not going to give any specific examples. I will say this, you know, Beth Meyers talked about critical theory, and I see that in the Wit and Wisdom in middle school. Okay, it's the idea that you're going to separate society into groups and then find one group to blame for all the ills of society. And that tone, there's a tone of that throughout Wit and Wisdom. But this is what's on my heart. All three of us have contacted the school board, and none of us have gotten a response. This is what I've learned about the school board here in Sumner County. First, if you're a parent and you've got a concern, you're not allowed to voice it. They won't let you speak. They will shut you down. If it's not an item on the agenda, they will not let you comment on it at their meetings. And they're the ones that control the agenda, which I think is by design to specifically avoid anything that parents may want to comment on. Second, they very seldom talk about curriculum. They spend a lot of time talking about budgets, naming the new school, naming a mascot, naming a press box, giving out awards, debating whether there should be a cell tower on school property, and congratulating their sports teams. And these are all fine. You know, that's important stuff. That's good. But they rarely discuss curriculum, which I think is one of the most important things. In fact, you know, they did discuss Wit and Wisdom one time at a school board meeting. It was a special call meeting. It wasn't the regular meeting. It was back in October of 2018. And that meeting was called to talk about the new schools being built. And someone decided to put ELA as the last item on the agenda. And when it came time to talk about ELA, about Wit and Wisdom, it was the first time they ever heard the words Wit and Wisdom. Director of schools said, this curriculum, we got to get materials for these teachers. We got to put it into their hands. We've got to order it, so we got to approve it. And it's called Wit and Wisdom. So I'm guessing that's the first time they heard of this curriculum. When the item came up for discussion, the chairman called the item. Not one member asked what it was. Not one of them said, hey, what is that? What is Wit and Wisdom? What is this curriculum? No one asked about it. Instead, they went back and decided to talk more about the previous items on the agenda. And every time the chairman tried to bring it up, he tried several attempts. Okay, guys, we gotta talk about ELA. We gotta talk about ELA. The board members went back and started talking about the previous items again. And when they finally realized what was happening, that nobody was interested in talking about it, talking about the curriculum, they laughed. And then they voted yes. Does that sound like a school board that cares or has an interest in what your kids are learning? They seem to have their priorities elsewhere to me. If someone's going to be on the school board, curriculum needs to be one of the top priorities, if not the top priority. The whole purpose of having a school board is to safeguard every aspect of student learning. And to shape the minds of the next generation is a huge responsibility. And you know, I'm not so sure that this school board in its current makeup is really up for the job. In spite of all that, parents, we need to contact the school board and demand that they put curriculum on the agenda. We have a right to have our voices heard. And finally, reach out to other parents. Reach out to other parents. Make them aware, because they may not be paying attention. I wasn't paying attention until a friend came to me and said, hey, have you looked at this curriculum? And then I started looking at it, and then I started doing my own research. And that's why I'm here tonight. So reach out to other parents. We have to pay attention. We cannot afford not to. Pay attention. We can't afford not to. Thank you.
All right, okay. Whew. All right, so something went wrong here. We're gonna cancel that. Okay. All right, so wow. I mean, you hear from Mom, you hear from so many people, and now you've heard from some dads. And I'm gonna bring up Josh Graham here. We're gonna bring him up here. He is someone from Sumner County, and he is also a father. And he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and make a little announcement here. Thank you. Welcome, Josh Graham.
Good afternoon. You guys are actually kind of lucky, because I've been contemplating running for school board for the better part of a year, and I've not made any formal announcement until right now. I am running for school board, District 9. Thank you. If you're not familiar with District 9, the current school board member is Patricia Brown. District 9 is part of Gallatin into Castilian Springs into Cottontown. It's a convoluted map. You need a Sherlock Holmes magnifier to figure out if you live in the district, or you can call the election commission and they can tell you. People have asked me, why are you running for school board? And it's because I'm frustrated and I'm fed up and I'm sick of having a school board that won't listen to my concerns and won't listen to the citizens' concerns. I'm sick of sending emails to the Board of Education and getting canned responses. I'm sick of being told we're trying to, it's our goal to, we make every effort to, and then nothing changes. And what Stephen King just said is absolutely correct. At these school board meetings, a public citizen cannot speak unless an item is on the agenda. In fact, at the last school board meeting, Joanna tried to speak for an item on the agenda, and they rewrote the rules in the middle of the meeting. Chairman Tim Brewer said that there wouldn't be public comment because she signed up to speak for an item that wasn't new business. And it's my understanding when she went to him and talked to him about that after the meeting, he said, well, it's an unwritten rule. That's authoritarianism, and that is tyranny. Now, I don't have all the answers regarding what we need to do in schools, but I know we need to be asking the questions, and I know we need to give the public an opportunity to address the board. Now, here's a fun little fact. At the end of every meeting, there is an opportunity for member contacts or member comments, right? So each member, all 11 of them, have an opportunity to discuss whatever they wanted to discuss. And you think that that would be the best time to say the constituents in my district, the people in our community, the teachers that I represent have a concern about A, B, or C. But if you go back and you watch these meeting videos, and I recommend that you do, you will see that your board members discuss birthday parties, and they discuss helicopter rides through Nashville, and they discuss a story they heard on NPR, and they discuss this and that and sunshine and roses, but they never discuss any of the opportunities that we have to be a better school system. So why am I running for school board? Well, I'm running for school board because public education in our community should be the best investment we make. It should be investing in the children because they are our future. It should be investing in the children so that they become productive. And maybe we can grow old and kick our feet up and say, you've done good. Our school board has plenty of time and energy to spend our bucks, but at the same time, they pass the buck and they never take action. And I assure you that if you help me get elected, I will spend the last 15 minutes of every meeting telling them every opportunity we have to improve, every opportunity that we can get better, how we can positively invest in our kids. I will return every email. I will talk to every citizen. No longer will it be taxation without representation. Jeremy Mansfield was actually quite nice when he said it was 75 cents on the dollar. It's more like 85 cents on the dollar that our school system absorbs. And I believe in investing in education, but also that 50 million surplus, they never mention when a parent with a child with special needs needs an additional service. They never mention the fact that they set aside $800,000 a year in legal defense costs, because when they don't do it right and they back families into a corner, a family has no choice but to sue them. And they don't mention that they will use that legal defense cost to hammer down any nail that stands up. Well, I stand up, and I would like your vote.
Awesome. Woo. All right. Okay. That's what we need. We need people to run. So, all right. Well, wonderful. Well, we are winding down. I know that you guys have, there's a lot that we learned today. We feel like you've crammed 4 years of college in 2 hours, right? And but we are bringing on another speaker, and amazing big round of applause for the parents that came up here. That's a lot, and the teachers. I mean, a lot.
And so we are going to bring on our next speaker, and this is Mr. Robby Starbuck. Yes. Some of you know him, huh? Wonderful. So Robby was first known as a filmmaker, directing Oscar-winning actors and some of the biggest music stars in the world. But his family's experience of fleeing Marxism in Cuba has always been his fuel to achieve the American dream. Once he saw that Marxism had come to threaten America with the rise of the socialist far left, he knew he had to stand up and run for office so that he could do his part to ensure America would always be a free country where the American dream was possible. He owns a production company where he has overseen more than 1,500 workers. He has experience running a staff and dealing with how to get things done, right? We want that, right? And, sorry, I got excited. While working with people who always think they're right. Do we know some politicians like that? Do you know some people? Okay. Skills that will help in Congress. So please, a huge, warm welcome for Robby Starbuck.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I don't normally bring anything up with me, but I brought my phone because there's a quote that I'm going to be reading to y'all later that I think is interesting to all this. But to begin, I want to talk about America because America right now, you know, with CRT and everything we see happening in our schools, this is a country in crisis. We are on the precipice of entering a new era in this country, and we really have two roads in front of us. We have two roads, one where we can choose socialism, one where we can choose freedom, and I think it's very clear where you all stand. We want to go down the road of freedom. So when we look at this country right now and we look at our youth and we look at our schools, we have to identify what these schools are. These schools are no longer just a place where, you know, we're trying to get our kids taught math and reading. This is a battleground. This is the battleground that will define what our politics and our country looks like 15 years from now. And we have to be very cognizant of that because this isn't just about CRT. CRT is just one piece of the puzzle, okay? So I want to start, you know, a little bit about what happened in Cuba, okay? In Cuba, they used the same division points that we see being used on us now, okay? They divided people by race. They went after the schools. They went into the streets, and they arrested everybody who dissented. They censored everybody who dissented. That sounds like what we're experiencing here. The only difference is in Cuba, they actually lied about being socialists. When they were asked, are you a socialist or are you a communist? Fidel Castro actually said no. He said, I'm a humanist. Every single time he was a humanist or I'm a Catholic until he had consolidated enough power, then he finally admitted, yeah, I'm a Marxist. But it took until that point. We're lucky enough to know that we have these people on the other side who are advocating for CRT, who are advocating for all these radical gender ideologies and things along these lines. They're at least admitting, yeah, we are socialists. We are kind of Marxists. They're at least telling us. So we have no excuse now for not acting. We have to act. And so to tell you a little bit here, you know, I think some of you guys may have heard about what happened in Williamson County. Did you guys hear what happened at Williamson County School Board? We may have created a little bit of a ruckus down there. And some people were upset, but this is what happens when you fight back. That's a good sign that people are upset. It means we did something that has really shaken things up. And what happened in the end, within 24 hours, what happened? Probably the principal person responsible for this forced masking ridiculousness, Fiscus, resigned. Pressure begets a reaction. And that's why we're here, because the motivation really needs to be, I can't do any of this on my own. Moms for Liberty can't do it on their own. Tennessee Stands can't do it on their own. It's every one of you. It's everybody together, our collective action and our sort of, really, this goes to the heart of our divisions between the left and right in our country. By nature, most of us are individualists. You know, I operate from a standpoint where when I ask myself questions, it's about individually, you know, how is this going to affect my family or me or things along those lines. But as a collective, we are so strong. The left has always understood that. We are really taking this on now, this new identity of saying, you know what? We are individualists and we believe in facts and we kind of operate in that lane, but we are going to come together for the good of this country, and we're going to use that collective action to create the pressure necessary to get results. And that's what we saw happen in Williamson County last night. And it's the reason that Joe Biden talked about it this week and lied about it, because the left is terrified. They are terrified of parents coming out, getting together, being loud, and not relenting until they get what they want, which is freedom in this country. So when you talk about CRT, I think one of the keys is us asking ourselves, why are they pushing this? This is an extraordinarily unpopular agenda, okay? Even people who are sort of blue dog Democrats, very, very, very opposed to CRT. So why are they doing it? If the majority of Americans are against it, why would they do it? It has nothing to do with convincing all of us that America's racist. They know we're not going to change our mind, okay? They know we're not going to change our mind and suddenly decide that this country we love so much is a racist place. It's not about that. It's about creating a generation of voters. They're going to create that generation of voters if we do nothing by making them familiar with language. This is linguistic manipulation. They want to teach them to be familiar with a certain set of words that we don't use. We don't use these words they use, like equity and inclusion, things that don't actually mean the words, what they're intended to mean. They don't mean those things. These are code words that they use. And essentially, they build in this whole curriculum, this whole language that these kids will grow up being familiar with, so that when they are at voting age, they hear politicians speak to them, they identify with the language of only one side. This is one of the traits of Marxism you always see. Marxism has never happened in any country where they had a shared language, shared understanding of facts. You have to separate those two things. We already have the separation on facts. Now we need the separation on language for them to be able to do what they want to do. So that's why they're doing this. It has nothing to do with us thinking it's popular. It's never going to be popular. And don't think that you're safe if you go into a private school. A lot of parents I've talked to said, I'm pulling my kid from public school and I'm putting them in private school. Well, let me tell you something. In the state of Tennessee right now, in private schools, almost all of them are accredited by an organization called NAIS, okay? NAIS has a thing called the People of Color Conference that they send their teachers to on a yearly basis, okay? At the very last one, they had 2 panels that were main stage, one called White Boys Behaving Badly and the other one called No More White Tears, okay? This is the ideology now being pushed on private schools. They, again, accredit schools, private schools here in Tennessee, the vast majority of them, okay? This NAIS also dictated to them and said, we're going to stop calling students boys and girls. We're just going to say students when you talk about kids because, again, the far left, they have to separate facts, they have to separate language, so we can't refer to people as boys and girls anymore, okay? Because that's in violation of their ethos. They have to separate us. And that's what CRT is all about, is that separation. You also have to look at who are the architects here. The architects of CRT make it very clear what the goals are. Ibram Kendi is one of them. He wrote the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And in that book, he makes it explicitly clear, to be anti-racist, you have to be anti-capitalist. Think about that. He says, to be anti-racist, you have to be anti-capitalist. And if you see these public school unions, our teachers' unions, they're spouting this line, CRT's not in our schools. They're trying to gaslight you again, okay? On the same day that they released that statement, the largest teachers' union in the country, they said there's no CRT in public schools. Same day, they had Ibram Kendi as their speaker for their national conference, which happens once a year. He was their keynote speaker. For 2 hours, he went on about 3 subjects: race, sexuality, and all of the different sexual divergences you can have from natural biology, okay? It was CRT in a nutshell. On the same day that they denied CRT exists in public schools, that's who they had, okay? And now I'll tell you another one. This is the quote I wanted to read to you guys. At UCLA, one of the other chief architects of CRT in America right now and chief advocates is Cheryl Harris. She says, she's a law professor at UCLA, and she said this about CRT. She said, that property rights are a function of whiteness. In order to achieve equality, we need to dismantle whiteness and dismantle property rights and then have large-scale redistribution of wealth. What does that sound like to you guys? It's really communism. It's full bore. I mean, they're not even trying to play around with social, that's communism. And what we see happening right now with masks This is another element of that plan. When you take away somebody's agency, and not just them as children, but their parents' agency and their control, their parental rights to be able to say, no, my child is going to breathe freely. You try to take that away and rip that away from somebody, and you get people into compliance, you can do anything after that. This isn't about a mask. It's about compliance. It's about control. So if anybody's deluded themselves into thinking that this is just about masks and it's going to stop after that, it's not going to stop. This is step one. This is control. Once they have that control, they will never let go. Us as parents, most of us have read our kids that book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. You guys remember that book? What are they going to do next? They're going to ask for milk, and that's what they're doing. The next thing will be the vaccine, and then after that, it'll be, you know, if you have this ideology, or report on your parents if they say these things at home. We've seen these things happen in other countries. We can't act stupid, okay? And that's, you know, I hate to say it, but sometimes some of these people, I'm like, you can't act stupid. Look at history. They've done this many times before. There's a playbook for all of this. You've got to wake up and you've got to get oriented to what these people do. That's why I say our schools are actually a battleground, because this is an ideological war. This isn't a difference of opinion. This is a group of people fundamentally trying to destroy our country. This is just one of the seeds to do it. And so now it's our job to make sure that those seeds never grow. And so, you know, there's a couple different places I think we need to identify the seeds. Kids' lives right now, okay? Let's look at the totality of their lives. We'll call them the pillars of culture, okay? News, entertainment, academia. We already talked about academia. We know that that's kind of a foregone conclusion here, okay? That the left has got that and they're brainwashing children through it. But if you're a typical child in America right now, you watch movies. You're being exposed to movies like, let's say, Dora the Explorer, okay? That movie, they had 3 references to Ruth Bader Ginsburg as a positive champion of women's rights, somebody who these kids should all look up to. Then you watch Scooby-Doo, same thing, 3 impressions of Ruth Bader Ginsburg as a hero of women's rights. They trash masculinity, and then they introduce kids to Tinder in a Scooby-Doo movie, an app where you go to have sex with people. They introduce Tinder, again, in a Scooby-Doo movie. This is what kids are being messaged with over and over and over with, okay? It doesn't stop. It's relentless. And then maybe they heard the song Old Town Road, okay? How many of you guys remember that song, Old Town Road? Unfortunately, a lot of people. And this song never stopped playing for like a year straight. So it was the #1 song that year, and all these little kids subscribed to the channel. The record label was aware that all these kids were subscribing. Their largest audience was little kids, okay? They know this. They send him out on a school tour. He goes to public schools, goes and does his little song and dance at the schools. Everybody loves it. He releases a children's book. The guy's name is Lil Nas. And then he goes on a tour with that book, and on that tour with that book, he says, oh yeah, I have a responsibility as an artist, you know, to be a role model for these kids. Fast forward 6 months later. Imagine you're one of those little kids. You saw Scooby-Doo that year, you saw Dora the Explorer, and the next thing you got was an alert from the cute little Old Town Road channel. You know what the next video they got alerted to was? A video of this guy simulating sex acts with Satan, okay? Don't forget about the Nike shoes, the Satan shoes. He then released Satan shoes to these kids with blood inside of the shoes, okay? So this is what a kid is being messaged in America, and then they go to school and they're taught that whiteness is evil, okay? They're taught to separate themselves into different groups, to see people automatically as oppressors or oppressed by their skin color, something that I thought we had been past many decades ago. And so it's time we reclaim this narrative, and part of reclaiming the narrative is saying, what is it we believe? And I think what we believe is actually very clear, very easy to explain to people. And it's something that historically is something people should be able to connect to. We believe in an ideology where we want our children to be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Very easy. It's very, very easy. And so if we want to return to that, we've got to recognize all these seeds in these different pillars of culture, and the one that I've left out is the news. The news is very obvious. I don't think I have to explain it to anybody. The news is awful, okay? So if that's what a kid is hearing throughout their day for over a decade, reinforced by teachers, critical race theory, question your gender, question your identity at every turn, that's a big part of this. You have to break down identity. So they're trying to go after identity in every single way they possibly can. That's why they introduce this gender ideology in kindergarten in many places with what's called a genderbread man, okay? And they have the kids move the pieces on the genderbread man around and show them that it's okay. See, it's still a genderbread man no matter how you move them, okay? They need to break that down. So how do we get to these seeds and stop them from growing? It's this collective action we just saw at Williamson County Schools. So if you see all the tables in the back of different groups to sign up with, Moms for Liberty, Tennessee Stands, my own campaign, we all do this action in the community across Middle Tennessee to make sure that we are never going to allow those seeds to grow here. Another is the obvious. So obviously I'm running for Congress here, and thank you, we're very excited about that. In Congress, you know, there's many different ways we're going to tackle this, but one of them chiefly is introducing an anti-CRT bill in Congress that would go federally and have an effect on people, and it would say this: it's not just about schools, it's about all schools, public and private, anybody who takes government money, businesses who take government money, okay? Lockheed Martin takes money from the government all the time. In fact, they live off of it. There are all these companies who are introducing CRT and forcing it onto their employees, okay? Like, let's look at a place like Coca-Cola where they told their employees, can you please be less white? The military. Yep, and the military too. And so in this anti-CRT bill, essentially what it would say is, if you receive funds from the government, you cannot train anybody with CRT, you cannot push CRT, you cannot teach anybody CRT, you can have no CRT materials in the building where you receive government funds. It's the quickest way to get rid of this stuff under the premise that this already violates every discrimination law we have. It is the most explicitly racist thing we've ever taught in school in my lifetime. And so outside of that, that action is so important, but silence is important too. There was this state of mind for a while that being the silent majority was a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's not. When you're a silent majority, you allow a very, very small group of people to control the conversation as long as they're very loud, okay? We can't allow that anymore. And that's what you saw at Williamson County School Board this week, is we refused to let a very small group control the conversation. The majority came out and they spoke up, and they spoke up loudly. And if you were there, you saw how good that felt for everybody to look around and see, wow, we are the overwhelming majority. And not only that, you saw the eyes of the other people go, oh, I did not realize that there were this many people who opposed me. And they looked, honestly, I haven't seen anybody look that shocked since Joe Biden got put out on stage and told he was a president. I'd never seen anything like it except for that moment. You know, it's seriously, these people, the thoughts, it felt like they couldn't speak almost. They were just sitting there staring. There was this one doctor, I'll never forget, she's sitting on the step and she's just sat there for like 10 minutes, and I imagine her mouth was open, but I couldn't see it. And she's just sitting there and she was watching all of us like, holy moly, where did these people come from? And so I watched something afterwards somebody sent me. They sent me this stream, and it was pretty funny. These ladies the next day were recounting it like they were at war or something, and there were all these evil people. And you look at the videos, you can see anybody with masks on, they could walk right through our crowd. We were very kind to these people all day, despite a lot of agitators who said a lot of really horrible things. But in that, they got to this point where they said, now you see, I thought that in Williamson County, maybe there would be some anti-mask people out at the edges, but I didn't think they'd be my neighbors. And it was essentially like, I thought the rednecks maybe wouldn't like it, but how dare these people who live next door to me not like it? And they said it was so terrifying. I was literally shaking when I realized my next door neighbor was there. And I was like, these people shake over everything, okay? So, but they were literally shaking over this. I would like to see one of them actually literally shake for once, because they say this about everything. But they don't recognize the power we have because we've been silent for too long. So that's got to change. We are going to be the very loud majority from now on. You know, there was a period of time when Newt Gingrich did this, and I think some of the people in the room maybe remember this. You know, they reclaimed the national narrative. They reclaimed the national narrative and reoriented us towards being proud of our values, proud of who we are, never silent, always loud, always showing up, never relenting, never giving an inch, and that's part of this. We cannot comply with tyrants, period. We don't co-parent with the government. We don't co-parent with the government. We don't co-parent with any of these tyrants, okay? The federal government is not our mommy, it's not our daddy, it's not our nanny. We don't need their help. You as a parent know what is right for your child. You may make a different decision than I do, but you have that freedom as a parent, and innately inside you, I believe that God gave you the answers for your child. Nobody in a school board knows better about your child than you. No doctor knows better about your child than you. No government entity knows more about your child than you do. You trust yourself. You trust your soul, what God's put in your heart about what is best for your child. And that is why you've shown up here, because you're ready to do that. So we need to be the most active we have ever been, ever. And I mean that literally, ever. We have to show up to things that we don't even care about, okay? We've got to show up for other people. People who do care about those things, because that's the power of collective action. If you show up for all those things for other people, they will show up for you, and there will be masses of people like they've never seen before, which is a line we've heard many times since Williamson County School Board. They were like, we've never seen anything like this. They're so angry. Honestly, these people at Williamson County School Board, and there were some people here who were there, they were not angry at all. They were not angry. These were people who were so proud of our country and where we were at that moment that we were ready to reclaim it, and we were ready to do anything to make sure our kids are free. And that's what I see here. You all are ready for that. So let's do it together. We can do this. We will do this. And the first step is saying we will not comply. Thank you, guys.
All right. Woo. Okay. Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Robby. So appreciate everything. And you know what, guys? We are just about at the end of our time here. Just want to do a few things really quickly and tell you a little bit about myself real quick. But one, go vote TN. Okay, this is an app I encourage you to download on your phone. Find out what district you're in, school board, commissioner. Find out who all your elected officials are. Very, very important to know who you're voting for, right? We got an election come up in 2022, right? Also, if you want to run, you need to know what district you're in, right? And who you're running up against. And so please download this app, get to know what's going on. Just tell you a little bit about myself here. This is my hubby. We were married in 4 days. It'll be 16 years. I can't believe it. Yes. As I said, we're from California. And if you noticed, a lot of people on this stage are actually not from Tennessee. And I'm going to tell you this. We came here in 2018 because we came here for the promised land of Tennessee, because we came from California. Now, we lived in San Diego, which is very conservative. However, we still wanted to come, and we wanted to get out of that. When we came here, I started getting to know a little bit about what's going on here, and I went, no, stop. No, I know where this goes. Please, no. And so I had no intentions of getting involved in any of this. I was a political activist out in California, fought in the medical freedom for years, over 20 years. And so when I got here, I went, stop, no. So we really wanted to, during COVID, kind of woke up. Has anybody here heard of Free Tennessee? We did, okay, awesome. So, and Chase back there, we did the open Tennessee freedom rallies that were downtown last year. And now, mind you, it was me and like 5 other people that did this. And, you know, the thing is that it doesn't take a lot of people to create change. It just takes people. okay? And so, I encourage you guys to get involved. And so, 2 things here in Sumner County. Did I do that right? Okay, August 16th, commissioners meeting, so that's Monday, okay, 7 p.m. Come, be a part, come listen, look at the agenda, figure it out, come and see what they're talking about. August 17th, Sumner County School Board. Yes, I was denied being able to speak last time, along with a friend of mine who is from California as well. Not everybody from California is here to bring politics here. We're here to help. So please know that, okay? And there's a lot of people here from Illinois, Michigan. Who here is from Illinois? Woo, okay, Michigan, okay, awesome. So we love this state and want to stop it from where it is going. We've been there, okay? So please embrace your foreigners. Here are some of the things for you to look at. Tennessee Stands, okay? Amazing. I've partnered with Tennessee Stands in Sumner County, Wilson County, Williamson County, and Davidson County. And we need to get people, it's a grassroots thing. Grassroots is the only thing that makes things happen, right? Okay, it's all grassroots. Moms for Liberty, okay? We have a new chapter in Davidson County, back in the back. Go talk to her, see what's going on there. Safeguard Our Schools, which is this. We're starting this. We're going to be doing this in other counties. We really just need to get people educated. They need to come and get educated. MakeAmericansFreeAgain.com. Please go there. A lot of homeschooling. If you want to homeschool, there's a lot of homeschooling resources there as well. America's Frontline Doctors. Please, they've been standing for our medical freedom for over a year now. And I just encourage you guys to get involved. And now is the time. Okay, if last year was the time, but that's okay. We need now. We need now. And when you leave here today, you're going to get a piece of paper that you have a lot of links on there. You're gonna how to get involved. And I just encourage you guys, don't file that paper away, okay? Read it, come and see us, email me, okay? We are stronger united, okay? Can we agree on that? We are stronger united, okay? And in an event like this, I want to call up all my people that are behind the scenes, because here's the thing is, guys, this event didn't happen because of me. This event happened because a whole bunch of people, come on, guys, come on. Okay, I want to welcome all the volunteers. Come on up down here. You come in front and back, on the stage, doesn't matter. Okay, everyone, all our speakers, will have you come on up here on stage for me. Okay, come on, let's scoot down here. Come on. The whole stage here. So guys, I want you to take a look at all these people that, come on. Okay, hey Cheryl, can you scoot down for me? Okay, we got everybody, come on. All right, come on. All right, we'll have the speakers come up on stage. So Robby, we'll have you come on and jump back up here for me. All right, and Aaron and Steve and Daryl and everybody. So come on, Josh, come on. You guys can come on down here. So you can see, okay, events like this take a lot of people to do, but here's the thing is, all these people volunteered their time, okay, because they believe in this mission. Come on in. All these speakers are amazing. They volunteered their time because this is a mission. This is not just, something that is going to be fly by night, guys. This is a mission, and we invite you to join this mission. We invite you to take our country back. We invite you to take Tennessee back, okay? And just be a part of this. And just want to thank you guys for being here on a Saturday. Thank you. And you will be getting an email with all kinds of information. Yes? Oh, my mom. This is my mom. Everyone thank my mom. Okay. This is my mom. Okay.
So she's like, are you going to tell them? I'm like, okay, that's right. If you're in District 3, that's why you got to know to go vote. I'm going to be running for school board. So, whew, crazy. So, and we need people to run. I have no qualifications at all to run. Jeremy, right? Where are we at, Jeremy, right? Perfect candidate. But that's okay because I care, right? That's what we need is people who care. So I want to give you guys a big round of applause, but also please thank everyone here. And please thank all of our speakers tonight. Thank you. You guys have a wonderful evening, all right? And please get involved. All right, thank you so much. Have a blessed night.